All right, welcome everyone to DeepStack's first freeze-out tournament on Twitch. Today we're going to be playing for our very first match against Andrew Brokos and Nate Mavis of the Thinking Poker podcast. We're going to get started right now with Nate, and go.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to start off here, opening the Jack-3 offsuit on the button. It's a little bit loose. I might otherwise fold, but we will see how DeepStack goes. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Poker is an adversarial thing. Usually there are humans playing against me, but today, if you are watching this, and if you are a mammal, we are all on Team Meatbag together. Go Meatbags.
And look at that, you've already successfully bluffed the computer in the first hand.
That's right, that's right. All right, so I have second pair here. The bot certainly limps a nice balanced range, I have found. My 8 is a bluff catcher. I will start by calling. The pot size bet instead of the half pot bet is significant and slightly worrying, but I certainly can't fold yet. I'm going to expect a barrel here with a lot of cards. I think a hand like Queen 6 or even Queen 4 is a hand that I've seen DeepStack bet a lot in this spot. I don't see any reason to do anything other than call. All right, so I just mentioned a lot of hands with queens in them, and it's appropriate that a queen comes on the river. This is a sort of card that DeepStack is a lot likelier to have than a lot of human opponents here, and this bet puts me in a very tough spot. I have a pure bluff catcher. I think I'm going to fold this hand, but this is tough. Playing against the bot is very, very hard, and yeah, so I'm going to fold. Okay, so turn 2 pair. All right. So the interface, I want to give a quick shout out to the Alberta folks for really all aspects of this, but certainly the interface is very, very nice. If you've ever played online poker before, hopefully what's going on is completely intelligible to you. If it's not, though, you should feel free to ask about it in the chat, and we'll be happy to give you a better guide to what's going on. We were discussing the bot a little bit off air before the stream started, and I said that I had felt vindicated because many things that DeepStack does are things that I did when I was primarily a heads-up no-limit player. Among them, not inflating the pot out of position, not 3-betting a lot out of the big blind before the flop, not check-raising a lot of flops when the stacks are deep. And although perhaps it was wrong when I did it, I think I had good reasons to do it, and the fact that DeepStack does it also is really heartening to me.
Well, Nate, both you and I have played a little bit, you more than I, prior to this match against DeepStack. I think we're both convinced that it plays pretty well, right? I mean, the fact that it's playing in a way, like you feel vindicated by the fact that you were playing the way it's playing now. You think its play now is worth imitating.
Yeah, absolutely. At least in certain respects. As always, just looking at what a good player does, then copying some feature of it into your game is very, very dangerous. But I do think that with something as fundamental as not inflating pots out of position, there's some chance that the reasons I was doing it is are the same as the reasons the computer does it, and that those reasons are good ones. Here, I think I can fold out some queen highs and some ace highs, but probably only if I bet 3/4. I'm not afraid to get raised here. I can easily fold if I get raised. To the 4, 8, 9. Well, I made it this far with Jack high. I should probably bluff again.
Typical meatbag logic.
All right, and I get picked up.
Owned.
That was not a good hand for the meatbags. But yes, I think DeepStack is very strong, and I also think DeepStack does some interesting things in terms of board coverage. It peels in position very light, and it mixes up a lot of its flop betting and flop checking ranges so that it covers a lot of boards on turns and rivers. Insofar as I can translate what it's doing into human logic, I think I think it worries more about board coverage after the flop than a lot of humans do. So I think this is close between betting and then giving up, and just giving up right from the get-go. I think, yeah, I think I'll try to fold out some of the weakest hands here. I do think it feels flops very light, even out of position. So if I want to fold out a hand like Queen 6 that might bluff me later, I think I need to go 3/4 pot. So I think I'll just bet that much. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. See, there we go. There we go. So DeepStack will use a mix of both raising and limping on the button. I find both these ranges to be very well balanced, with the raising range being a bit stronger than the limping range, as you would expect. Here, I would probably call a smaller bet, but I won't call this one. These ace-x hands, once they miss the flop, are really quite far behind on average. And while DeepStack figures out what it's doing on the button here, I should note that Andrew and I have a friendly side bet for charity today. We're playing a best of 7. I will play either the first 2 or the first 3 matches. Every match I lose, I will send $50 to a charity of his choice, and similarly, every match he loses, he'll send $50 to a charity of my choice. When I lose, I will be sending money to Andrew's choice, which is the Boston Urban Debate League. Is that the correct name, or is it just the Boston Debate League, Andrew?
Just Boston Debate League.
The Boston Debate League. And when Andrew loses, he will be sending money to Doctors Without Borders. So thanks to Andrew for being willing to put some friendly money up on the side.
Only seems appropriate for Team Meatbag to put some skin in the game, have some skin in the game.
Absolutely. All right, so 10-10-3. I think checking is fine. I think a small bet is fine too. I think ace-7 is a reasonable candidate for checking. So this 4 is a bit scarier against the computer than it would be against most humans. Like hands like Jack-4 suited will call a lot more than human opponents will. I'm happy to check it down. Similar comments apply to the 6. And if he bets, I've got a close decision. All right, 7 plays. I'm crawling back to even. As the stacks get deeper, I think DeepStack's edge against me gets smaller. I think DeepStack is not just a clever name. I think it plays a lot better with DeepStacks than I do. I think I've grinded Snapshot enough that although I certainly don't play perfectly with short stacks, the computer's edge over me is diminished.
We got a question from Twitch, Nate, and you have more experience. You might be in a better position to answer this than I am. Someone was asking about overbetting. Have you seen DeepStack overbet much? Have you found overbetting to be effective against DeepStack?
I have not found overbetting to be effective against DeepStack. DeepStack definitely overbets. I'm not surprised at that. A lot of strong human players do this, and strong computers do too. I feel slightly heartened that just this morning when I was playing a practice match against the bot, I thought to myself, "Oh, this would be a good spot for the computer to overbet," and it promptly jammed 6 times pot into me.
Oh wow! I haven't seen that.
Yeah. It was really a canonical overbetting spot. It was like 10-9 deuce with a flush draw. I check called, and then it came 10-9-5. Then it came 10-5 turn and river. Turn went check, and I checked the river over to it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it jabbed. I was like, oh boy, with all the flushes, and then wham, 17K right in my face. All right, so I've got a gut shot here. I think I'll just fold because DeepStack potted it. I don't like raising at this depth, and I think check calling will be tough for me because DeepStack barrels a lot. But I do think I'm folding the best hand a lot, and I'm folding a lot of equity a lot.
I'm surprised that's a hand it pots with.
Yeah, that I thought that a lot. It's I find, so this is what I was saying about board coverage, and this is highly speculative on my part, but the way I put together potting ranges on the flop, like which hands can improve to really good hands, especially this deep, right? This is something we tell our students, like think about the hands that can really make something or that block your opponents. And DeepStack seems to just pot it with all manner of stuff, like but then when the king or the seven comes on the turn river, you know, I can't say like, oh, that doesn't really hit its potting range, because it's got, so I think it's a board coverage thing, but I'm not sure.
You know, to your earlier point about not being able to just imitate what stronger players are doing, I imagine this is the kind of stuff that, you know, it's only doing that stuff at a certain frequency. And when you look at the kinds of solutions that are generated by like a PO solver or a GTO range builder, you find that on early streets, there tends to be a lot of indifference points. In other words, not a lot of hands that are played as a mix of bets and checks. So it's, you can't just look at that and say, oh, if I have king seven suited on that flop, I should just pot it every time.
Correct.
Because, you know, the frequency at which DeepStack is potting that hand and other various sorts of hands on that flop is probably not 100%.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and that's right. For whatever it's worth, I think it was king seven offsuit, which
you're right.
Yeah, which brings me to another observation, which is that DeepStack defends a lot with all manner of suited hands. And so a point you see in books like The Mathematics of Poker is that optimal bluffing ranges pre-flop often include a lot of suited hands that look strange, like 6-5 suited or ace-5 suited in a 5-betting range. 3, 4, 7. Okay, I've got a gut shot here. I'll return to that in a second. So I think I should bet here. Against a human, I would choose a smaller bet size. I think I need to put a little more pressure on DeepStack if I want to get it to fold. So an interesting. Okay, and I did get a fold out of ace high, so that's good. Returning to the earlier observation, I find that DeepStack peels with a lot of suited hands that I wouldn't expect it to peel with, and less often with offsuit hands, which again supports my hypothesis that it's a board coverage thing. And as we read about in those books like Mathematics of Poker, we will, often you, for board coverage reasons, want to have certain ranks of hands covered, and other things equal, it makes sense to choose the suited hand. So here's something that I'm just going to call. Other players would 3-bet. I think DeepStack will 3-bet this sometimes. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's a stack dependent thing. But I also think DeepStack just calls with a lot of these hands. King 7 4. So I'd like to bet here against an opponent that will overbluff or underbluff. There are some reasons to check, but I think DeepStack is not very raise happy in these spots. Oops, now I'm in a bad spot. So I think I have to fold. There are going to be a lot of scare cards on the river. I'm going to get bluffed a lot. DeepStack will raise 7s and 4s here, maddeningly. Yeah, so I'm just going to fold. It had ace 7. Okay.
Yeah, nice fold.
Yeah.
You're in pretty bad shape there.
I was in pretty bad shape. Nice catch, DeepStack. Any more questions from Twitch chat?
I don't know. I just saw that one because Michael copy pasted it into the Google Hangouts chat. I'm not actually following the Twitch chat myself.
I see. I believe Angela.
Right now.
I believe Angela Bassa is watching us. So quick shout out to Angela, podcast guest, AI podcast expert.
Yeah, I gotta say it's pretty intimidating though, knowing that people like that are watching the match.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And Nikolai, also a podcast AI expert. So here, I have a very strong hand. I don't see a reason to raise though. It is very nice not having to worry about timing tells. the snap call, snap check. That would be something that a human could learn from. Yeah, I think I'll just go ahead and bet for value here. I could be turning some ace highs into bluffs here. Be turning some busted flush draws into bluffs here. If I get raised, I may have to call. It can value raise worse, I think. So we're in the 150, 300 level. I'm going to tone down my opening raise a little bit. I'll start going 2.5x. And folding 6-3 offsuit even to a min raise. Well, I've treaded water through the first 30 hands. That makes me happy about about making it to the phase of this match where DeepStack's edge will be smaller.
And that makes this a fitting parable, I think, for the broader human versus artificial intelligence battle that's going on in the world right now. We humans are just kind of trying to tread water for as long as we can.
Yeah. It is interesting. I find myself, and this echoes, or this is prompted by remarks that Tyler Cowan makes in his book Average is Over. I find myself thinking how great it would be to be playing with a computer, like how well, like if I could get DeepStack to play with me, but then make some tweaks around the edges, or like also use my observation of my opponent in combination with the computer. I think that would be a pretty fearsome opponent.
Yeah.
And like the advantages in the future will be from being the sort of person who works with computers, not against them. All right, so I don't see any reason not to bet here. I think on an ace-high board, I can get away with a smaller bet size. I find that DeepStack rarely donks out, rarely leads without the initiative out of position, which is interesting to me. Also something I do, but
I don't think I've seen that. I've only played 3 matches against it prior to this, but come to think of it, I'm not sure I've seen it do that ever.
Yeah, I think I've seen it once, and that was with top pair on a board that was good for the pre-flop caller. All right. So this strikes me as a good give-up hand, especially against an opponent who's very sticky on the flop.
Yeah.
So I think especially one that'll peel with a lot of any sort of one-card draw. I think the 5 of diamonds will probably give me a chop, so that's good. Here I'll just fold. Ooh, fold the best hand.
Hey, you didn't hit a flush.
Oh, sorry. So we'll see our first 3-bet here. At a smaller blind size, I'd make it a little bit bigger.
I was going to say, I've been sizing up my 3-bets. I've been surprised some of the hands DeepStack has called 3-bets within position.
Yeah, no, it's very sticky. It's very sticky. It'll also be sticky on the flop, I've noticed. So this board is, I think DeepStack will hit this board in a lot of ways. I think it'll call 2100 with a lot of hands I want it to call with. So against a lot of humans, I would bet here and happily check raise. Here, I think I should close my eyes and bet again. I'm not ready to check fold. I don't think check calling will be particularly great. I think if I bet, I can get calls from a lot of hands I'm ahead of. Let's see, so if I bet that much, then I set up a river shove on safe rivers. Sounds good. And if it shoves on me, I think I have to call. Hey, it shoved on me. Yeah. Well, I was not. Yeah. Good game, DeepStack. Ooh. It's all right. One for DeepStack. So good game. Good game. The Boston Debate League is $50 richer. And we will move on to match number 2 if nobody's got any comments in the interim.
Actually, we have a question on Twitter from Blaze Fair, which I don't know if he wants us to use his real name, but I love that his screen name. But anyway, he said, why are they showing the AIs holding after each hand? Does anybody from the Alberta team want to comment on that?
Yeah, we can comment on that. Yep, just to make it easier on you to figure out the bot strategy as it plays. So yeah, its hand is face up every time after the hand's done. That's not true for the human hands. So if you fold, it does not see your cards.
Although it wouldn't really matter if it did, right? Like it's not in any way changing its play. Exactly.
Yeah, it's not adaptive anyhow. But even like in the interface, it does not even show it the cards, even if it wanted to do anything with it. So.
Very good. So we will move on to match 2, and only if I win this one do I get to play the third one. So I'm really going to try to bring my A game here. Andrew, do you like my turn bet call with the queens?
It does seem close to me. I think I would fold. It does seem to me like it's relatively close to the bottom of your range. I mean, I imagine that you have a fair number of hands like that you would have 3-bet pre-flop that you might not have even bet the flop with, and you probably would not have followed through on the turn. You know, like the ace king, ace queen, ace jack sorts of hands are not getting that far. I imagine you have suited connectors in your range, which are mostly going to be better bet calls there. So like you probably have at least 4 combinations of the nuts and several more combinations of like 2 pairs. Yeah, I guess it just doesn't seem that close to the top of your, like I kind of wonder what would you bet fold there, I guess.
A hand like 8s maybe, or is that a better?
That might be a better check calling hand, or that's the way I'd be inclined to play it.
Ace 8 suited.
Yeah, that I think could be a bet fold.
Ace 10 suited. Well, I guess I'm not 3-betting ace 10 suited, but all right. So I did raise over a limp here. And I flopped, I got a good flop. So I think I'll expect to get peeled a lot on this flop, but that's okay because I'm happy to bet fold the turn on a lot of cards. Whoa, wait, whoa, what are you doing? Well, that's not sporting at all.
I was just thinking I might check the flop.
Yeah, well, nice shot, Andrew. That would have been better. I could call and try to spike a queen or a jack or a king.
Or a diamond.
I could do that. Or a diamond. Or an 8, maybe. There's that. But I think I will pull in my horns and fold here. Too weak? See, it had a set. I don't know whether that's good or not.
Yeah, it seems like an awfully strong hand to bet fold, but as I say, I might have gone for a check call on the flop anyway. Yeah. Or I mean, expecting it to check often, but being willing to call it the bets. Mm-hmm. I think part of the merit of that is you do dominate some hands that it will bluff there. You know, the queen jack, the jack 8, and getting raised on the flop is kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah. So we did see DeepStack 3-bet me, but it had kings. I think I'll just check call with this hand. Now that it's potted into me, my implied odds are much less good. But I think I'll make a DeepStack call here and call instead.
Yeah, I think you still have a calling hand if you hit a 9 or a 7. I don't think you have like great implied odds on those cards, but I think you can generally take them to showdown if you hit a 9 or a 7.
So here I would like to bluff. I have 9 high. It's one of the worst hands I could have here. I think I need to size up. I could have a lot of jacks. I can represent a jack. I think DeepStack correctly gets pretty sticky when all the draws miss and the top card pairs on the river. So I think I'll pot it. See how that goes. And I think I would also have the awareness to pot it with a jack or even a queen. So let's see how this turns out. All right. So I did not need to pot it to get that hand to fold. So I don't know whether my bet sizing was good.
Yeah, I don't know how effective this would be against DeepStack AI. Often when I'm playing against humans, I will employ a small bet size there just exploitively, because I think humans are not as good as DeepStack AI probably will be about, hero calling king high or whatever on the river when it's getting 5-1. I think a lot of humans will just fold too many unpaired hands.
Yeah, I think that's a great play against humans. I can tell you from experience that it will not always work against DeepStack. And DeepStack does choose these small suited aces as the weaker parts of its 3-betting range. I tend to see small suited connectors, smaller suited aces, and then very strong hands in DeepStack's 3-betting range. So this is interesting, a min raise. Against a human, I would like to bet here, but I don't think I can get away with it against DeepStack. I do think I will call a small bet, at least. DeepStack likes to bluff its 1-card draws. There should be plenty of ace-high in DeepStack's range, so I will check and be roughly indifferent to calling or folding if it bets. Yeah, I think I'll make a trusting fold here.
Raising could be an option also. I guess having a spade in your hand is maybe better for that.
Yeah. I think folding's better than calling, certainly. Hey, ace jack. Huh. So how am I playing generally, Andrew?
Looks good. As I certainly didn't see anything that I hugely disagreed with. As we discussed the queen's hand, where I think I would have been on the other side of that one, and the king jack suited. I think I would have checked the flop, but I don't. Neither of those are cases where I'm 100% sure that, or anywhere close to 100% sure that would have been the right play.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing that we've talked about is the danger of treating DeepStack like a human opponent, and just wildly overgeneralizing from the things you've seen. Like I definitely had an attitude of buckle up and bet call in that spot. And I think that's partly just correct, because overpairs are really, really hard to beat, especially when you're so sticky in 3-bet pots before the flop. Like it can have all sorts of 1-pair on the flop, and it's going to call pretty much all its 1-pair and even some 0-pair hands. But it can be very hard to separate that kind of legitimate generalization from just gross overgeneralization and false pattern recognition.
They always have it in it.
DeepStack does not always have it. That's Andrew, do you remember back in the day when Steve's Bets was doing very well at the highest stakes heads up sit and goes, and everybody thought that he was a fish on a heater?
Kind of.
Well, back in the day, there was this guy named Steve's Bets. He was doing really well at the highest stakes sit and goes, heads up sit and goes, and everybody thought he was a fish on a heater. And one thing that's interesting is that some of the things that everybody thought he was a fish on a heater for doing are things that DeepStack does with like the pre-flop peeling, especially like in 3-bets, 2 3-bets with short stacks. So like he would call with hands that are not very good with an SPR of 1 or 2 in position. I'm not saying he was right or he was a genius who was ahead of his time, but I do think it's interesting that DeepStack does some similarly ambitious stuff. And here I'm going to peel with the ace-10.
Isn't that Stephen Chidwick, or am I?
I'm not sure. It could be some totally other guy instead of Steve's Bets. If you, I can find this. Sorry if I'm. Yeah. Sorry, Steve's Bets, if you're out there and I've gotten this wrong.
No, Pocket 5 says Stephen Jacobs is Steve's Bets.
Yeah, that sounds more like it.
That's not a name I recognize, but apparently he won the 25K W Coop heads up event in 2008.
Yeah, that seems right. Yeah. I think there were a lot of angry people on 2+2 about that. Okay, so here I think I have the best hand, a non-negligible amount, but I block a lot of bluffs, and DeepStack will pot it for thin value, so I'm just going to fold. Nice. Hey, 2-pair. All right. See? This meatbag's got a little bit of game, I hope.
DeepStack does seem to be running a little good against you in terms of making 2-pair plus.
Yeah, I used up all my run good in the practice rounds, I think. I made a bunch of flushes and sets. It's a lot easier to win when you make flushes and sets. And here I'll just make a deep stack call out of position with my draw. 9. Here I think I'll need to call a small bet. Now I will not need to call a small bet, I think. I also don't want to bluff. Check and hope for a check back. Hey.
Wow. I was thinking that's when I would have turned into a bluff. It's hard to see you get into the river with too many hands weaker than that. And it's also hard to see DeepStack checking back. I mean, I guess he had a 7 there, but with the queen coming in on the end, I think that improves a lot of the hands that he might otherwise have been checking to try to take the showdown.
What's your bluff target there?
I think getting him off of a jack is realistic.
Do you think that's a lot of his holdings going into the river?
I guess I'm not sure how often a jack bets the flop, but otherwise, yeah, I don't see why you couldn't have a fair bit of jack X.
Yeah, reasonable.
Like, it certainly seems like a reasonable turn checking hand.
Check, 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 check. All right, please don't raise me, DeepStack. I have a tell, but DeepStack can't see it. All right, bluffing with the best hand. That's... Andrew, I hope you found playing against DeepStack as intellectually exciting as I have. It's constantly doing unexpected plays. It's constantly putting me in tough spots, and just enough of it is recognizable. So it's not like I have to completely abandon my conceptual scheme in order to try to understand what it's doing, but it's enough to make me question my conceptual scheme all the time, and that's really fun.
Yeah, I find it very difficult to predict what kinds of hands it's going to have, which is... It's just so different from the way I approach playing against humans. I think in terms of how I play poker generally, I've moved towards trying to play a more like game theoretically, at least having an idea of what like the game theoretically optimal play might be in a particular situation. But I do that least often when playing heads up, just because there's the most opportunities to get a sense of how people are playing and try to exploit them. And so the idea of trying to like devise a GTO heads up strategy on the fly is tricky, and I constantly find I'm tempted to revert to more exploitive play style, obviously based on like by definition, I think I would have to be assuming too much about its previous play to think that I could be doing something very exploitive against it.
Sure.
Another question from Twitch: are there other unusual things that we've seen it do?
In this match or generally?
Probably generally.
So it makes some very strange checkbacks. I think, yeah, I've seen it check back some hands that are very, very strong. Hands that if I saw a human do it, I would say like, oh, that person just doesn't understand heads up poker. So I think it's a little bit less bluffy than I expected it to be. I mean, it's still very bluffy, but I think number one, what I think of is emphasizing board coverage, like peeling with King 7 when that has no piece of the flop. And number two, being willing to make what Timex, what Mike McDonald would call hero checks a lot. I think I've been surprised by that too. What about you, Andrew?
The things you mentioned, actually, I wanted to add a comment about the hero checks. I think in part, we're not accustomed to doing that because human players tend to be pretty poor at like bluff raising in particular. I think is if I had to say like there's a single move in poker that human players tend not to do often enough or tend to use poorly, I think it's bluff raising. And
Just check back to Jack. Well, all right. It just checked back a hand that I thought it would value bet. Anyway, sorry to
I
interrupt.
think like exploitively, and this is something you see like in Ed Miller's books and elsewhere. A lot of people I think correctly assume you can just do a fair bit of bet folding against most human opponents, or like you just don't have to worry that much about getting raised in a lot of spots where the threat of a raise, DeepStack not making that kind of exploitive assumption is kind of like accounting for the threat of a raise. And realistically, we're probably not going to do a very good job of bluff raising DeepStack either.
Andrew, this look familiar? I just got called. I might start with a check this time.
Yeah,
I think DeepStack covers this board really well, and particularly because it's going to peel like Jack 6 suited on me. A lot of runouts, so we're very deep relative to the pot here. We have a large SPR. I think DeepStack's going to make it very hard for me on a lot of runouts. So I'm desperately trying to control the pot. This makes me think it's going to make large bets with a lot of hands. Here I'm tempted again to bet, but I think it's hit a lot of this. And it's coordinated enough where life's going to be hard for me on a lot of rivers, so I'm going to check it again.
And I think there's a lot of hands like 8-7 suited, 9-8 suited, Jack 10 suited that you're going to be playing as a check as well.
Yeah,
I think there's just like this is a good board for you to be checking a lot.
Yeah, and I think once it bets, I think all the reasons to check are reasons to just call here. Well, not all of them, but enough of them. I'm just calling. Best card in the deck.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Best card in the deck. Boy, I feel like it's going to make some hero checks. I kind of want to value bet here. Unfortunately, I might get a hero fold. I think really a lot of my
this with bluffs. I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm actually going to check here. I think I'm going to check it again.
I agree it's going to do value checking, but I do think it'll value bet worse. Like I'll be surprised if it checks back a Jack.
Yeah, well, and it also might fold. Like I'm not at all convinced this hand was calling on the river. Actually,
right.
DeepStack's tough, man. It's like so. That's a great example of a hand I played differently against a computer than I would against almost any human.
For what it's worth, I think that's a pretty good flop check against better humans as well.
Yep. What about the river play?
I think humans tend to be stickier than they should be. We just really want to see the cards. when it's just one bet to see the cards, I think people have trouble folding in those spots.
Oh boy. So I peeled the flop for half pot, and I hit a 10 on the turn, which is good. But
for what it's worth, I think it's a fold.
Yeah, so I was leaning toward a fold anyway. Hey, there we go.
Nice, team meat bag. That's just one of those. I imagine people watching this are like, "Oh my god, you just folded a straight in a heads-up match." And I don't think it matters very much that you have a straight when you're facing a pot-sized bet. You mostly have a bluff catcher. I mean, maybe he's potting a set, but I kind of doubt it. And you don't have a good bluff catcher. Not having a heart, not blocking his straights in any way. It's really not a good bluff catcher, and you still have another straight to play. Like I would rather be calling there with two pair than with a straight. And I think you beat most of the same hands.
I agree. Note that DeepStack just 3-bet at this stack depth from 600 to 1800 with pocket sevens. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think at this depth, that's not a hand I would have 3-bet.
Yeah, me neither.
When it's deeper, I would have, or shallower, I would have been ready to get it in pre, but this is a stack size at which I would probably not 3-bet sevens.
Pay off like a meat bag fish here. Yeah, nice spot. Well, I mean, that's all the money that went in after the flop, so I'm not too worried, but it's pretty.
But still, a nice value bet.
It's a good value bet. It's a good value bet. Full pot. It got 2 big blinds out of me after the flop. It's pretty good. Oh boy. All right, I've got a queen. I got a key card here. Got the Queen of Hearts. Boy, getting sticky. Deep, like it's really tough. Like I would love to just half pot it here against humans who overfold, but I can't do that.
I mean, he's going to fold hands like Ace 4, King 7.
You sure? Are you sure? I'm not so sure. I think I need to bet 900 to get those hands to fold. At least I think the extra 300 is well invested. King A. I'm not. I mean, maybe that's a question. This is actually probably possibly a question for the Alberta folks. Is what's the largest bet that DeepStack would call? I mean, A, is DeepStack folding this hand all the time? And B, what's the largest bet it would call? I know we can't get the answers to such questions immediately, but I would be curious about that. And I do think that DeepStack is quite sensitive to bet sizing on every street.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. We could look it up.
Okay. 3 4s, ace kicker. I would just check call this flop with a lot of hands. So I can pick up a lot of draws here. I think I can size up bigger for the reasons I was just saying. It might actually make sense to full pot it. I think that's what I'll do. All right.
In terms of other unusual things we've seen it do, and we just saw an example of this, is I do think it does a good job of value betting, and I'm aware that I and other humans sort of have this leak of sizing our value bets relative to our hand strength. So betting smaller when we're thin value betting and bigger when we're value betting stronger hands. And to some extent, there are exploitive reasons for doing that. But you do see DeepStack doing things like full potting third pair bad kicker on the river. And it does make it tougher to play against.
Any merit to a lead here?
I think so. I think you're going to have a lot of hands that don't want to allow it to take a free card, whether that's because you're sort of protecting with a 7. I might have chosen a smaller sizing. I think because you're doing a fair amount of like block betting here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm also doing some semi-bluffing though. Like, I guess that's the question. Am I really doing a lot of semi-bluffing? So now I block a likely calling hand. It's also a little bit easier if it's made it this far. This is really tough. Tough spot. It's fun to be able to actually think things through. I can't use the excuse of my time bank's running out. I have to take my best guess. I have to actually think it through. So I block some of his calling hands. I also block some of his value betting hands that I beat.
Yeah, don't check. Let's start there.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm kind of like, I can see a case for betting small and calling a shove. I can see a case for just betting like a medium-sized amount, and I don't know that I would shove, but I feel like there might be reasons to.
Not much over pot. I feel like something we've talked about is with an SPR of 1 1/3, like 1.3 to 1.4. Boy, like the edge I have on the extra money if I bet half pot is not good. So I think I should choose an all-in bet size with all my betting hands, and I think this is a good betting hand. Bonsai.
Wow.
Oh no. That X means it folded, folks. That's wow. Okay. Yeah, I almost checked. I didn't almost check. I was thinking about checking until you said don't check. I think I wouldn't have checked ultimately, but I was considering a check. In hindsight, do you see any justification for that?
No, I do think I might not have bet all in. I'm not sure that's a spot where you necessarily want your entire range to be all in, but I don't really have a lot of confidence in my ability to make a claim like that. No. But I mean, as you said, you're blocking some calling hands, and I mean, there are stronger hands possible. You don't have the nuts.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like the strength of your own range and whether he's really incentivized to call with a hand like 6-5 of hearts.
So I think DeepStack has a turn raising range, right? And given that it does, I'm a little bit surprised that's not part of it. I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the paired board is just like making that a less desirable raising hand.
All right, I bet flop check on the turn. I think I would have bet the turn with some of my hands that are worse than this. Make a small bluff here. Everything missed. It's just gonna call me. I think I shouldn't bet half pot. Might bet that much though. Okay, not really what I'm targeting, but could have folded.
I got another question from Blaze Fair on Twitter asking, can DeepStack AI get a sample versus human players and machine learn how to deviate best to exploit caveman tendencies? I think the answer is, I mean, could it? Like, they would have to rewrite the way it works. Right now, as far as I understand, I'm pretty confident this is true. It's not gathering any data based on how we play or changing its own play in any way, but it's not hard to imagine building something like that on top of a program like this.
Yeah. So DeepStack is just doing equilibrium play. So yeah, you're right. It's not trying to clone model or adapt or do anything. But this is a thing that we spent a lot of time looking at in the past, especially in heads-up limit is where we did a lot of work on opponent modeling. And there are a couple of ways you can do it, right? You can try to adapt online. So as you're playing against someone, you can figure out what strategy is working best against them. We also have techniques where if you have a pretty big set of data about someone, if you have something like on the order of 50,000 hands, you can go and make a custom designed sparring partner, like designed to exploit all their weaknesses. That worked really well in heads up limit. And that's one of the exciting things we're looking to do moving forward for a no limit.
I just want to flag this. DeepStack peeled me on the turn. So the flop went check. I bet half pot on the turn. DeepStack peeled me with the 8-6 no spade. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
With some devious plans. It's
not something I would expect a lot of human players to do. Certainly not something I would do.
Yeah. Did not find the river call or the river bluff raise, though.
I mean, it's also easy to imagine. I don't think this is really like. It's important to keep in mind the computer poker research group's aim here is not really to build a really good poker player for its own sake, because you can imagine another thing that computers would be particularly good at or could be particularly good at is gathering biological data against humans as it's playing, and just if you're playing on a webcam, for instance, being able to pick up things on your face or skin conductivity or any of that sort of stuff to get reads on whether you're bluffing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's trying to win the Masters, not win the most money golf hustling.
Right.
Right. So I just folded Jack-7 suited to the 3-bet, thinking that DeepStack would probably peel me, and DeepStack itself also had Jack-7 suited. All right. I still have a chance here, holding on to a slight lead. Blinds are about to go up even more.
And actually, another interesting thing that I think this is in Mathematics of Poker. They talk a bit about this, about in a situation where you have an edge in a heads-up match, which DeepStack likely does against almost anyone it plays against. It's going to be correct for you to pass up certain spots where essentially you can anticipate doing even better later in the match if you wouldn't want to like take a coin flip with a 51-49 edge if you're going to have a bigger edge than that going forwards in the match, even though, because this is in some sense a tournament, even though it's winner take all. And it's not taking that into account. It's I think just always taking the most immediately profitable play and not considering the idea of like having an edge going forward in the match.
I think that's right. So here's a hand that would be pretty easy to play against a lot of humans, but it's not easy to play against DeepStack. So I'm going to call this 3-bet. Ace Jack is a good ways ahead of a lot of humans 3-betting ranges. It's not against DeepStack, but I have to take my price here. I have position and a good hand going forward. And I flop a funny hand. Interesting. So DeepStack will have a lot of the hands I beat against DeepStack. So there will be some suited aces at 3-bet that I'm ahead of. Some 6-5, 7-6 suited type hands that I'm ahead of. That's interesting. I think I'll start with. So if I bet and get raised, that's pretty bad. That's just really bad. I don't want that to happen. And the SPR is only 2.5.
Yeah, it's going to happen a lot.
Yeah. I could just move all in. That seems a little bit rash. I could check. That seems warm and comfortable and safe. Something that meatbags like. I could bet small and just fold away a lot of equity if I get raised. I don't think I like that.
No.
But maybe it doesn't have that many. It has all those ace kings. If I that, yeah, I think I'm just gonna check. How do you like that, Andrew?
Yeah, that's what I would have done. I think you're right. It's an awkward stack size. If it had bet, I probably would have just gone all in. I'm not sure that's right, but I think it kind of relates to what we were just talking about in the inverse. Yeah, just embrace variance as the human here.
So I think. So I block. What do I block?
Jack 9.
Block Jack 9. Block some ace 8 suited, ace 7 suited. I would love to bet here, but I can't see a really good justification for it. It could fold some 7s. I mean, I think DeepStack can give me credit. Double barreling here has some merit.
You can bluff the river after checking the turn too.
Yeah, I can also bet the river after I drill it.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, because you still really don't want to get check raised on the turn. You still have a lot of
equity, and I could have the best hand a lot too.
Yeah.
Blammo, that's nice and hard.
Yeah, so
I want to value bet. So I guess
here's what's going to happen. It's going to check. You're going to bet. It's going to check raise all in, and you're going to be sick.
Yeah. So how would I play? So against a human, this is a slam dunk value bet. Yes.
Yeah.
Usually.
Although it's still, I mean, it's kind of obvious you just have an ace here. I mean, I guess you can have like ace 10 or something that you would play this way, but it's a tough spot against better humans. I think this is a spot that I, for better or worse, am leaning towards hero checking against better human players.
That's interesting.
It's like, how much incentive does it have to call the river with worse?
Yeah. So let's say let's say it had like Queen Jack. So it'll sometimes 3-bet with a hand like Queen Jack offsuit, Queen Jack suited. Like, is it really? What do I have? Like 10-9. I can't. Why would I bet 10-9? Oh, I could bet 10-9 to get. Oof.
I mean, so what are your bluffs here? Like, maybe you have a really bad suited connector that you know.
Yeah, I'm going to hero check. Yeah, sorry. Really bad suited connector, yes. I could have like 7-6. I could have
King 9.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think I'm going to hero check.
I kind of like the check.
Yeah. 7-5. Yeah, that hand's not calling.
No, but it might check raise.
It might raise, yeah. Yeah, thanks for helping me find my better angels there.
I mean, I'm not at all sure that was correct.
Oh, no, but... So this is a hand that I think DeepStack would appeal to a bet, but I don't really know how to make it work. One thing I'm learning is that it's much harder to remember that you're on video when you can't see your own video in real time. Well, I've gotten this far. And I bet what I did on the turn, in part to get ace high to fold sometimes. Yeah, I think the computer will fold here sometimes. Huh. All right.
One thing I haven't seen much of from DeepStack is small bets, or I guess just like really different bet sizes. Like I don't feel like it's done a lot of really weird bet sizing things, which I think I have seen. I know that Brian Selsky made a video at some point looking at a heads-up match between two of the like top AI programs from 2 or 3 years ago, and their bet sizing was just like all over the place. And I don't really feel that way when I'm playing against DeepStack. Like the sizings feel kind of normal to me.
Yeah. By the way, if some future version of Ben Solsky is reviewing this for a strategy video, please be nice to me. I know I'm making mistakes all over the place. Also, please come on the podcast again and talk about it.
Yeah, I imagine Doug Polk wouldn't even deign to watch this, but I do sort of have it in my mind that there's someone like that who was just like, these clowns.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like somebody with frosted tipped hair, telling me how stupid I am. It's okay. We love you, Doug. Come on the show. Also, I'm up on you lifetime, Doug Polk, just so you know. That's a true fact. And it's at 1-2 no limit, but still. Yeah, I'll just walk right into this buzzsaw. Now, I do think DeepStack will have some threes here, but I also...
You have a very clear value bet here.
Yeah.
This is not the ace-jack. I would have gone even bigger than that. I mean, I guess 5-4 got there, but I feel like you have a lot of unpaired hands that can get to the river. Yeah, I mean, you're not necessarily incentivized to bluff with all of them, but...
Yeah, that's fair.
I think you're pretty darn close to the nuts there, and it's a spot where your range is. You can have a lot of weak hands as well.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say I'm close to the nuts. I think DeepStack has just a bucket full of threes, but I still have a really good hand there. And it's not clear that DeepStack having a lot of threes should make me want to change my bet size all that much.
I mean, I guess by close to the nuts, I just mean there are plenty of worse hands it's incentivized to call with.
Sure.
Even to a large bet size, I think you don't have to worry. It can't just only defend with hands better than Jack X and avoid being exploited by bluffs, I think.
Mm-hmm. So I have some value here.
Do you?
I mean, I think if I fold, I'm folding away plenty of equity, but I'm going to fold anyway.
Yeah, I think especially against the pot size bet. I mean, the problem is the draws have so much equity against you, plus you have to face another bet on the river. I don't know, that spot seems pretty similar to me to the when we folded the straight on the turn.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of your hand.
That's interesting. I like that comparison a lot. Should say, even though I'm arguably getting my butt kicked, this is still tremendous fun. I'm feeling very confident in my ability to pull this one out.
That's looking good for you so far.
Yeah. The blinds aren't going to get any smaller. So this is tough. I think I have just too much hand here to fold, but I am going to fold it eventually sometimes.
Yeah, it's awfully similar to the hand we just played. I think you're right. Your hand is just enough stronger, especially because DeepStack will make pot size bets. I wouldn't be shocked to see it show up with King 7.
Wow! Boom! King.
Wow!
How do you like that turn bet? Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. I would love to know why it does that.
That's wild.
Yeah,
that's one of the weirdest hands I've seen it play.
That's really funny.
What is the point of potting the turn with that?
Wait, was it a pot? Could have been half pot.
I'm pretty sure it bet 3,200.
I think this carrot 4,800. I think that's the last thing that happened. I think that says that it bet 4,800 and I folded.
So that would be right. That would be pot. 4,800 into 4,800 means it's collecting 9,600 now.
Oh, yep, that's right. Yep, that's right.
I mean, I guess it's just turning that into a bluff, but that seems like a crazy hand to turn into a bluff.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to start min raising now. Wow, interesting hand, DeepStack. I'm reading David Halberstam's classic Summer of 49 right now, and this reminds me a bit of how people used to think about baseball. Like, our conceptual scheme has advanced and very much shifted, and there are some things that they say that are like very important to the strategy of baseball that we now understand to be more or less nonsense. But it's just recognizable enough, just enough that you really want to treat the old timers with respect. I've got the 3 straight. I have 10 high. I think 1200 can fold out some hands that I want to fold out, especially since I'm planning to bet the turn at least sometimes. Owned.
I think that king 8 suited hand also gets back to Laissez-Faire's question about why are we seeing deep stacks cards. It's just way more fun that way.
Oh, it's fantastic fun. So I think deep stack will semi-bluff a lot of turns here if I check, and should. So I think I should bluff catch with this. I think no reason to raise here.
There's even a chance.
Pot says, yeah, sorry.
Better doing this with just a queen.
Yeah. I guess there's an argument for shoving here and trying to let it call with worse, especially if I'm not going to make a lot of money on the river.
I think I would just call.
But yeah, I'm just trying to weigh all my options. I don't see a reason to bet here, except to bet fold against a predictable human. Okay. That's interesting. Deep stack limps a lot. Let's see if I can get away with a limp.
Nope.
No. I had ace queen, so.
It's kind of interesting that it chooses to jam that hand rather than like raise call off or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like over 20 big blinds. 23 or something.
Yep.
Although admittedly it is a tricky hand to play if it raises and is called. You know, it ends up out of position, often missing the flop.
Yeah. Against its best model of a limp calling hand, certainly. Which includes many hands with all ranks. but right, this is an interesting, this gets back to the board coverage thing I'm talking about. This could be something that people talk about in 10 years, is how like those idiots back in the day just completely failed to understand board coverage. Like I could easily imagine looking back at coverage of all televised poker from now and saying like, man, these people, like they think they can narrow their opponent's ranges and they make these hero calls and hero bluffs and so on. But like all of this is premised on this absolute garbage foundation, which is that like you shouldn't care about board coverage. Like I would not be surprised if future poker commentary has an element of that at least. All right, so now all I have to do is not fold too much in deep stack. Can't do that much against me. So hooray for that. I think I've got a bet here. I think I've got a good bet folding hand. I could see an argument for betting a little bit more, but at this depth, I think, yeah, so I folded a queen high. It's nice. One mistake I'm trying not to make is it's easy when you're intimidated by an opponent to just get very, very, very passive. Like, oh, what if, like I remember Cole South got moved to my direct right once in the main event. And like, I was so scared to bet the flop with top pair. It's like, what if he raises? What if he raises? But like, it's just a bad way to react to it. Like, it's just a way to make their good play even better is by taking all your effective plays out of your arsenal.
Yeah, a really important early bit of poker advice I got from someone who, in retrospect, was probably not that great of a player himself, but was a far greater player than I was at the time. It was when I was going to play the WSOP for the first time, the main event, and I was, I think, understandably, just imagining these nightmare scenarios where, you know, you're at a table with some really great player and they just like put you in a nasty spot. And the person said to me, you know, they're dealt 2 cards out of the deck, out of the same deck that you are, right? Yeah. You know, they're not superheroes. And when you're really deep, they do start to approximate superheroes.
Yeah.
Like there's just a lot more that they're doing that makes your life difficult if you don't understand it. But yeah, especially as you get shallower, it's like the cards really do determine a lot as long as you have some semblance of like non-exploitability.
Yeah, that's right. I certainly know that before my first main event, crap. I spent way too much time and now we're back to even. Yeah, golly shucks. Okay, I have jacks. Before my first main events, I spent way too much time thinking about whether or not I would fold the second nuts in certain situations. Right. Okay, so 10, 20. I think I have too much to shove here. I think I'm just 3x at this level. Nice flop. So I would certainly bet here with a lot of bad hands. Half pot. Half pot is a bet. So this flop is so dry. I think I'm still ahead a lot. I think DeepStack will check behind a lot if I check. I don't see a reason not to.
I think almost right now, you're just going to go half pot for stacks.
Yeah. This is a little bit less than half pot, but it leaves me. Oh, man. Oh, no. Okay. So
that's it. That's the worst card in the deck.
Oh, yep. Second place is not close, but like an ace is not as bad a card as this.
No, not even close.
Yeah. The ace of spades, not as bad. So this is really bad. Rigged. Just kidding. It's not rigged. It's not even close to rigged. Not even close. Not even close. So I don't have that many sevens. I think I can just check, start by betting. Would I double barrel that much? I think I'm going to start by checking.
Let's have a plan before you check if he shoves.
Yeah. I'd call a lot of sevens. So it could peel the turn. So it could have like a 6-5 type hand. I think that's possible. Mm-hmm. Could have all sorts of sevens. Like an 8-6 type hand, especially an 8-6 suited. That's possible for DeepStack. I think it peels kind of light there. Mm-hmm. I have seen a peel with some naked overcards. So a hand like Ace-9 is possible.
How about
a lot of sevens?
Jack-8 or Jack-10? How relevant do you think it is that you're blocking this?
I think it folds the flop a fair amount with those hands, but I'm not sure.
And you're not blocking Jack-8 of spades or Jack-8 of hearts, which are probably the ones it's more likely to peel the flop with.
Yeah, that's right. Although, I am blocking the Jack-8 of diamonds.
Right.
It could also have like kings. No, seriously, it could.
Could it really?
Yeah. I think I've spent more time practicing against it.
No, you certainly have. Yeah, I mean, and at this stack depth, there's more of a case for keeping overpairs in your calling range. I think the deeper you are, the less of a case there is for ever slow playing overpairs pre-flop, just because the flop will do enough to add nut hands back into your range, even if you take them out by 3-betting pre.
I'm really glad I don't drink, because I would be running off for a beer right now.
It's crazy how quickly we went from like, oh, we have effectively the nuts. Let's just like find a line to get in, and suddenly we're just hating life on the river.
I guess it's a check fold unless it's really over bluffing. Because the problem is that it value bets every better hand. It can also have fours, by the way. It's a lot better four. Yeah. That's especially deep stack. And
you have so little 7x that it doesn't really have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Like I think even like its flushes, it can value bet if you check. I think.
And I think it will never value bet a hand like 8s or something. I don't think it'll ever value bet where. So I think it's actually a check fold. But about the price I'm getting.
I mean, the problem is like it feels like one of those comfortable meat bag lines of just like, oh, we'll just check ball.
Yeah. Well, so I think it's a check, and then it's going to bluff pretty optimally. Like I don't think I can't beat any value hands, but I can beat every single bluff. So maybe I should make my decision based on blocker value.
Yeah, which I feel like swings a little bit in the opposite direction. Like I think just because you're unblocking, or you're blocking like Jack-8 and Jack-10 of diamonds, and you're not blocking any flushes or really even any like terribly relevant full house combinations.
Yeah.
Check and you'll win sometimes. Like I think if it has a 9, it just goes check and you win.
You know what's really nice? I think my mother is watching this stream, and she'll love me no matter whether I win or lose, and that's just great.
She's probably getting bored because she has no idea what we're talking about.
Okay, I think it's a check fold, right? Check fold?
That's what I would do.
Okay, 4 minutes, 11 seconds later, I'm check folding. Nice. Thank you for not bluffing.
Ship it.
All right. There we go. There we go.
Speaking of peeling with random overcards, though, even on the turn, it didn't have anything going on.
Yeah, that's wild. Then it didn't bluff the
Although
river.
your turn bet was pretty small, which I guess
less than half
you're
pot.
inducing him to call with a hand like that. That's fine. But...
Boy, I have not grinded snap shove recently. I think this is a fold. Will it jam on me? Can I get away with a limp?
It doesn't jam as much as I would have thought.
I think I can. I'm going to try to sneak in a limp. Let's see how that goes.
A question from Twitch. Any thoughts on varying your preflop raise size, or if that's even a meaningful exploit against DeepStack?
DeepStack does it. I don't think it's an exploit because DeepStack will not try to generalize your play. So it's something you can do. So like, yeah, it's something you can do, and DeepStack won't be great at figuring out what hands you're doing it with. They'll just react in theory. DeepStack varies its raise size. You can do it, but yeah, I would rather not make things more like heads up hold'em is complicated enough, and I'd rather not make it more complicated for myself by introducing all of these like just exploding the game tree, to turning my little game tree cactus into a big old bonsai game tree. That I'm even worse at navigating. But yeah, I think there are players who could do that really well. So here I'm just going to move all in with the king 4. I've got a lot of hot and cold value. I don't have a lot of playing edge or anything after the flop, so I'm just gonna ship it here. See what it does.
Okay, Nate,
wow.
your mother may be bored, but Angela Bassa just said that it's riveting.
Oh, fantastic! Hi, Angela. Thanks again for coming on the show. You were great. Thanks for watching. I like how we've had like the whole AI month on the podcast. It's like March 2017 is the month of poker AI. It's just fantastic. And here, Queen 9. It's a clear shove with 12, 13 big blinds. It folds Jack 9 offsuit. That's interesting. Correct, but not by much, I think.
Now we've actually seen it, or I mean, you have, and you've showed me the hands of it making some pretty strange. I would think.
Yeah. So that was actually that was just a bug that got cleared up. So
it was okay.
Yeah. I got to do a little beta testing too, and it turns out there were just a couple little edge cases where distinguishing nominal bet size from effective bet size was not going perfectly, and so it was making what looked like some very funny limp folds. So here's a hand that I think DeepStack would call, but I think I'm going to fold.
Good check raise. It's not really deep enough to check raise. With deeper stacks, I think you could check.
Okay, nice hand, DeepStack.
I think like the fact that you have a decent barreling hand on hearts makes it a good check raise at deeper stacks, but with this stack size, like you're not gonna have enough equity to like barrel all in.
Mm-hmm. And I would jam so many of the hands that hit that board pre-flop that a check raise, like I shouldn't be going crazy check raising.
And that may be part of why you can get away with just betting 5 high on the flop.
Yeah. That's interesting, right? Like I feel like I learned something about poker just now. And I'm moving all in. Ace 9 offsuit, especially if we have people tuning in who are not. There we go. I won.
Yeah, you called with worse.
There we go. Nice work.
Interesting that's a limp call for DeepStack on the button rather than just a shove.
That's very interesting. So I lived to match 3. The deal was I only got to play 3 matches if I won at least one of the first 2. So I get to play the third one. So hooray for that. Yeah, this is good. This is good. Thanks for not bluffing with the King Jack, DeepStack. I appreciate that.
Pardon me for just a second. I'm going to stretch.
Yeah. This is something, by the way, Andrew does when he plays poker. He takes routine stretching breaks, and I think that's really smart. I think it's a good thing for a disciplined player to do. So this is not a very good hand, but I am going to peel it for the 3-bet. I think position is just worth so much. Oh, excuse me. Sorry for my phone there. So I just got 3-bet by King 10 offsuit at level 1. So it must be using a very mixed strategy with those hands. Again, I think
200 big blinds deep. That does not strike me as a great 3-betting hand. But
no, and I know that DeepStack is not 3-betting hands like that all the time. So yeah, so I think mixing it up is this again supports my hypothesis that that board coverage and information hiding is something that DeepStack values more than humans do.
I think that's even already a change we've seen. You were talking before about the commenters a couple of years from now possibly looking back with disdain on the way we think about some things now.
Yes.
And I think you see that already with continuation betting and how much people kind of used to think like, oh well, the pre-flop raiser just obviously has a stronger range than the pre-flop caller, and therefore like is entitled to bet the flop in all situations.
Yes.
And I think we've already kind of gotten the idea that like to the extent that was true, the pre-flop raiser was not raising enough hands, and possibly the pre-flop caller was like not doing a very good job of either like calling overly weak hands or not slow playing some hands that should have been pre-flop or something like that, or just giving up too easily on the flop. But I think that's like already something that we've come to understand a lot better.
Yeah, I think that must be right. So this is another board. Whenever I find myself wanting to check and call with a draw, it always bets the pot into me. I am going to still check and call, but I would prefer to be calling a smaller bet. Blammo. Nice turn card AI or a random number generator. So I think it will barrel with a lot of hands, and I have a lot of hands. I'm not sure I should have a betting range here, and it's hard for me to get to the river with any like pure bluffs.
Yeah, I kind of like trying to check raise here. Yeah, so that's exactly the sort of hand that might you might get a check raise in against.
Well, it won't. Yeah, it'll bet. It won't bet call, but
right, but didn't call.
Yeah.
And you never know. It might bet call.
Might bet 3-bet.
Fair enough.
So either way, this will be my last match. Again, if I lose, I will be donating $50 more to the Boston Debate League. Very fine organization. It certainly does a lot to prepare kids for not only a lifetime of critical thinking, but all sorts of other more domain-specific skills. Really very fine show there.
Hopefully it's teaching a few skills that will continue to be relevant in a world of very effective artificial intelligence.
Yeah, probably disproportionately skills that will become more and more valuable in such a world. So it folded a deuce to me here on the turn. That's interesting. Makes me like my bet less, but but I still think I should bet.
But it makes me like some of our folds better. I mean, I think it's a common thing in a situation where a lot of your bluffs are high equity hands, hands that have like against that hand anyway are going to be like 2 overcards plus draw. It's really hard to justify continuing when you sort of have poor visibility on the next street and also just kind of poor raw equity. Like your made hands, it's drawing dead against, or in some cases dead against, and many of your bluffs still have a lot of equity against it. It's just like really not getting much of a price to continue.
Yep. So right there, we just saw it peel before the flop. That is, call a 3x raise before the flop with 4 deuce suited, which a lot of people would say is a fish play. I myself remember being at a party once with a bunch of poker players, and a very famous poker player said that, yeah, that Phil Ivey guy, he's really good. He's a great poker player, but sometimes when he plays heads up, he's just not paying attention because he'll call with King 7 to a 3x raise. And if he'll do that, I will never quit him, is what this prominent player said. So that particular bit of drunken boasting is not holding up very well, I don't think. So I'm just not.
Speaking of board coverage, yeah, I mean, this strikes me as a hand you might well want to raise pre-flop. I think it'll play well out of position, like in terms of like having some hands when you're out of position in deep stack. This is sort of a nice one to have.
Yep.
I also might have check raised. In fact, I think I probably would have check raised the flop.
Well, what's your range there look like
For check raising the flop?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess a combination of like strong Queen X plus for value, and then some draws as strong as this. Maybe Yeah, I guess I wouldn't have like 6-5 off, kind of like draws, and I mean it wouldn't be a big check raising range.
Yeah, all I'd say is that you won't have many value check raising hands. So you shouldn't have many bluff check raising hands either. By the way, I was check calling for value. Check calling for value. I got value on that flop.
Yeah, this is a particularly good one.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's some comments about my mic just since I sat back down, which I didn't unplug anything. So
yeah, you're breaking up. Your video is breaking up just a little bit for me. The Alberta guys are fine. So
okay, yeah, I mean that's going to be a connection issue that I don't have a lot of control over.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying your ISP is Nickcast approved? I think I don't see against DeepStack in the way I think it plays. I don't see a lot of reason to bet here. I'm happy to show it down.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised it checked a hand that weak on the river.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some give ups that I don't. That speaking of revising my conceptual scheme, there are some give ups that just don't make sense to me, which is cool and fun. I cannot wait to review these hands, assuming I can figure out how to download them. So that's.
Yeah, we can. We'll give you the hands afterwards.
Thanks. I will be very embarrassed, especially at some of the hands I was grinding. I was tired, so I think I just I have a little bit too much to fold for one big blind here, but it's close. And here I just fold, and I got bluffed. So that's why, yeah, that's why it's close on the turn. Unfortunately, we did not do any gambling with the with any other people who might be playing DeepStack at any point. So it's a best out of 7 for bragging rights, and Andrew and I have a little gambling on the side here, but that is all. And I could 3-bet this ace queen here, but I'm keeping it snug out of position. This is tough. Again, I'm going to be. Yeah, I have very poor reverse implied odds here, but I can't fold this hand getting this good a price. Or I should, and I just don't know it. All right. Nice, yeah. So my ace queen was the best hand, remains the best hand. I am, given how popular overbetting is these days, I'm surprised at how little of it DeepStack is doing. I do wonder, along the lines of what future generations of poker commentators will say, I do wonder whether this year will be considered the year of insane overbetting.
I think, again, it's one of those things sort of like the river check raising that humans are worse than they should be about capping their range, and therefore like creating good overbetting situations that if DeepStack AI is taking board coverage into account and sort of like passively assuming that its opposition, could be taking board coverage into account, or like playing in a way that it won't be exploited by players who are taking board coverage into account, then that would probably explain why you're seeing less overbetting than you would from top human players.
Yeah, very well said. And again, in baseball, this may be a strange decade of the shift, where it makes sense against old meatbag baseball players and not against new meatbag baseball players. And this is tough. This is a bad situation, but with all the straight draws that DeepStack covers very well, especially for a min raise, I think I'm going to get bluffed off king high when it's the best hand a lot later. So I'm going to make a reluctant sort of crying fold here.
Okay, Angela has just offered to match. She said specifically the donation to the Boston Debate League, but I'm not sure if she was aware of the the Doctors Without Borders side of the bet. But she said if we beat the AI, she would match that donation.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much, Angela. It's very kind of you.
Yes, thank you, Angela.
It also fits well what she said on the show, because she seems, I'm really one of the big let's work with computers, and there are some things computers are good at people, and Angela's much more on like no, it's just a matter of time. I'm really smart. I manage a whole team of these people. We are screwed. The robots are gonna win. And she knows more than I do about this stuff, so I'm kind of tempted to meta rationally believe her. So I think I've got a 4-bet here.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to go that big. Let's try 49. Let's try 47.50. See if it'll make a peel with a hand I want it to peel with. Wow. Okay. No, it won't. It won't. No, I will not peel with that. Maybe Angela's right. But really, sincerely, thank you very much, Angela. That is generous and kind, and also sporting of you. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, second. For what it's worth, I've seen, obviously it was different stack sizes, but I have been 4-bet by ace 10 offsuit in deep stack hands, which I think is often a very good 4-betting hand. It's one of those like a bit too weak to call a 3-bet, and good blocker effects and whatnot.
Yep, and I've seen it really put in, I think 4-bets, 5-bets with ace 5 suited pre-flop. So here's another hand I'm reluctantly folding. I'm going to fold and get shown the worst hand here a lot, but I still have to fold. Yep, 10 deuce. Wow. But like, why is it bluffing with that hand? I don't know. Nice hand, deep stack. You're so confusing.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that you got bluffed, but I wouldn't have thought it would be that handy.
that it's really something. I think in particular hands with like undercards to the board, like X deuce, X deuce X 3X. Those are hands that it's choosing to get aggressive with in spots where I would not always. I would not always, and those are often suited hands that have played pre-flop that I wouldn't tend to. There we go, top pair. And I don't see any reason to raise here. And I think so, especially because deep stack just min raised before the flop. I've got more straight draws I would like to bet on this turn. I think I can. I think I would try to bet a little bit more with those hands. I would not like to be raised. Okay. So I'm going to start with a call. Way too near the top of my range to fold.
Good river.
I don't see any reason to bet here. I do see some reasons to bet here, but I see better reasons to check. If
I wouldn't hate a bet there, actually. I think like
no.
Okay, that was a good river card for some bet sizes. It is not a good river card when you face a shove. I think it's no longer relevant that we have 2 pair here.
Yep.
And the fact that 5-6 got there has suddenly become a lot more of a problem.
Yep, that's right. And it can definitely check sets there on the flop. I block some of those. But the 7 was the river card, so I don't block 3s and 4s. I'm going to fold. Fold?
I think I would fold here, yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Nice hand. Nice hand. Good bet size. Wow.
It's a good bluffing hand, too.
It's a good bluffing hand.
That one does make sense to me why it would do that.
It does make sense to me. Not that I would like actually do that all the time, but that's a nice hand.
Yeah.
That's a nice hand. That's really...
And it's hard for you to have 5-6 there, calling the pot size raise on the turn.
It is.
It is one of those situations. Like it does seem like a decent overbetting situation where you are somewhat capped and it holds a blocker.
Yeah, makes me not like my turn bet size very much.
I don't know if this would have changed the outcome, but I guess this kind of contradicts what I just said about you not having 5-6. But if you do have 5-6 in your range, then I think you do get to have a donk betting range on the river. In which case, King 7 I think is a pretty decent. I guess it's still a bet fold. Maybe
yeah, but then I'm getting such a good price.
Right.
I think I can bet here, although...
Yeah, I think so. I know we just had a bad experience with getting raised on the turn.
This is important, though. You can't just pull in your horns and get really passive. Right. Like just blindly shifting to one really bad strategy is not good.
I think you still have a value bet on the river. I think like a decent amount of his ace and queen of clubs hands are betting the flop. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't balance. I just mean like I think it has to call with a fair number of hands worse than this.
I think that's right.
Flop went check check, so I mean you could have all kinds of air that you bet the turn with.
That's right. I do have a lot of gut shots. That's right. I do. So I should probably bet what I would bet. So I think that much. I'm going to bet that much. And if I get raised, I will probably... Let's see. So...
You're probably indifferent.
That's right. Check, bet, call, raise. That's interesting.
I wonder if holding a 9 means you're blocking any of its bluffing range. Like if that's the kind of hand it's turning into a bluff on the river.
I was wondering that more about the jack of clubs is not really. I think I fold. Can I beat a value raise? No. I'm gonna fold. Nah.
Yes, I was about to say, I think in these cases, or at least my strategy against it in these cases where I think I'm probably indifferent is to assume that it has an edge on me, and therefore always choose the option that involves putting money in the pot.
Yeah, how I learned to stop worrying and love the variance. That's
right.
I'm having too much fun. I want to keep playing.
So you do value your survival.
I do value my survival. That's right. This is great fun. Thank you very much for talking through these hands so eloquently with me. I will not return the favor. I will be skipping out after this match and leaving Andrew to talk, either to monologue or to talk with the very fine Alberta folks.
Yeah, I think Michael's going to talk to me.
Yeah.
Which, frankly, I get to talk to you a lot. Not that I don't enjoy it, but...
Yeah, I mean, geez, all last weekend we were just hanging out. Oh, man, can't value about this hand ever. That's... okay. That's interesting. I would often bet that hand somewhere.
Yeah, of the hands that I've seen you play, I think that was one of the ones that I liked the least when you bet the pocket threes on like a 10-9-7 flop. It was one of the very first hands you played. But yeah, I'm generally very reluctant to put money in the pot in any way with an underpair, especially on a board like that where there's also some obvious draws and stuff. They're just they're not hands that play well on future streets, and they have very poor equity.
Yep. For whatever it's worth, I've really, even what you see now is the result of a lot of leak plugging relative to what I used to be like in that respect. I kind of want to make a deep stack call here, but I think I'll just fold.
It could be a check raise too.
I think I'm not check raising a lot at all here.
Yeah, but you're check raising a little bit.
I'd rather do that with like ace 3, ace 4 maybe. Then I can just check call those hands maybe.
I mean, I guess like backdoor flush draws help.
Yeah, maybe like 6-4 suiteds.
Yeah. If you're just going to check fold though, I kind of like dunking the flop.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Although I guess that's not really a flop you're going to do a lot of dunking on.
Which is why, maybe this is all why DeepStack just calls. Which, I mean, if it's calling a lot of pairs, and yeah.
I mean, the 6 and the 4 are pretty often live.
So look, I'm folding these 4s. I'm folding them.
Yeah, I think that's mandatory.
Yeah, but a lot of players wouldn't. So look, I'm folding the 4s.
Yeah, you could actually shove pre-flop too.
I could do that.
Small pairs do surprisingly well.
Yeah. It's funny, like thinking about these situations now, like I think of myself in a lot of ways as a math player, but so often my first instinct when I see like this kind of weak top pair hand in this spot is just to say, like, oh, I wonder if he looks strong. Like that like X% of the time that I can get a strong or a weak tell on my opponent, it just makes such a difference in these spots. 7, 8, 10, check. Okay.
This was this check the whole way after the flop, or did it bet go
Yeah,
in?
it was check the whole way.
Yeah, I think I actually would have bet the river. You're going to get to the river with a lot of air in an unbet pot.
Yeah.
I think that probably makes this a call now. Also, yeah, because I think he can value bet a jack such that you have a relevant blocker.
Yep.
I don't mind that we're anthropomorphizing DeepStack. It worries me a little that I'm instantly turning it into a male.
Yeah.
Sorry for all you anti-justice warriors out there.
You had to go there. Here we go. I actually am not check raising this flop a lot against DeepStack. I think it barrels off a lot here. 9, 10. I've got my 9 10s. I've got some clubs. I have some blockers to calling hands. How do you feel about check calling here?
It's fine. Like for the reasons you said, that's a nasty turn card.
It's about as bad as it gets.
I still think you have a pretty clear check call, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, especially against an opponent that'll blast off with, 9 deuce of diamonds sometimes on the turn or whatever. Yeah, I don't see,
a half pot bet. I feel pretty good.
Yeah, but I can't raise, right?
I doubt it. You could maybe bet the turn.
Nice river.
You are getting some nasty runouts. And I mean, it's made some strong hands, but you've gotten some really nasty runouts too.
Wow.
That's why we're not folding the turn.
Yeah.
Pizza Poker Psych thinks you're playing too tight.
Pre-flop?
He didn't specify.
Yeah. I'm folding some hands pre-flop. If he thinks I'm playing weak, like I've had specific reasons for checking and calling some of these hands. And I do think that not inflating the pot out of position is a strong play. I'm folding a bit pre-flop. Like some of the marginal hands I'm turning into folds pre-flop.
Yeah, I mean, that is another thing. A lot of my heads-up experience, for obvious reasons, is against players weaker than me. And by obvious reasons, I don't mean because I'm some heads-up god. I just mean like there are reasons why I avoid players tougher than me and seek out players weaker than me.
Yeah.
And when you're the stronger,
Yeah.
So
yeah. So I think this is just a floating point issue.
Right.
I think it's trying to bet full pot.
Yeah.
That's tough. If I call with this, I think I have a lot of better aces to call with. So I'm going to fold. This might be an example of what our correspondent thinks is overly tight play, but I'm happy with it. And I think I'm just trying not to over c-bet.
Yeah.
Wow, 5-7. Okay.
And I think what I was starting to say is when you are the stronger player, you can be a little looser pre-flop because you're expecting to have slightly better equity realization after the flop. And when you're the weaker player, you may have an interest in like bloating pots pre-flop, like using a larger pre-flop raise sizing or doing more 3-betting or something like that. But you don't necessarily have an interest in making thin calls pre-flop if you end up getting outplayed after the flop.
Yep.
Like even if like deep stack versus deep stack, there are some calls it could make. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can properly make those calls.
That is right.
And for what it's worth, I don't think you've been excessively tight.
That's nice. Thanks, Andrew. So I can try to fold out like 10 high, 9 high. I might try to do that. I have some barreling cards too. So I will try to just fold out some of the worst hands here. I do think that some of my play looks very strange to players who grew up in the raise and c-bet era.
All right, so this is interesting. Now, Pizza Poker Psych is saying that the latest generation of Heads Up No Limit AI are very aggressive, which I would argue we are playing against the latest generation of.
Yeah, this is it. If you want to, yeah, that's not. That's yeah, the latest generation. Yeah, I mean, DeepStack is very aggressive in some ways, but yeah, my cat really disagrees with that claim. If you can hear him, it's interesting. Value bet, too bad pair there.
Yeah. I do think you're a little Pat. Like you're doing a lot of just like snap checking. Like I think there's case for betting the flop with a hand like this.
Yeah, I've been deep stacking it out of position, like not donking.
Well, this was a limp pot though. I think that's pretty different from like betting into a pre-flop raiser.
That's fair. That's fair. That's arguably a mistake I'm making. I could raise here. I think DeepStack will play well on a lot of runouts. If DeepStack didn't cover boards as well.
Yeah, I think not having a diamond hurts you here in terms of raising.
Yeah, it's really interesting how often I find myself actively considering that DeepStack covers boards really well. Now I think I have to bluff.
Yeah.
How about that much? I think that much.
Hard being bad.
Nice.
That's the kind of hand we're trying to
Well, I mean, certainly, if it's not folding that hand, then my bluff is very good.
Yes.
All right, so a spot like that. So I would want to check call with some threes. I think I will have some better queens to bet out with. I think I'll start with a check here.
Yeah, I think you're going to want a mix of bets and checks with queens, and although like DeepStack will probably have like a mixed strategy with all of its different kickers, I think a fine human corollary to that is just to check your weaker kickers. And
my meat bag approximation is just a check.
Right, exactly. I'm going to mute the mic for a second so people don't have to listen to me chewing.
And here the ace is a very bad card for me, but I'm just going to call. Too much hand to fold. The ace pairing on the river is good, but I'm still not going to like it if I get bet into, and I win. Wow. I was not expecting that hand in a 3-bet range. I have not seen it do that. That's a first for me. I don't know why there's some 10-7 offsuit in the 3-betting range at that depth. That is a mystery.
Yeah, that's really hard to explain.
So if we were a little bit shorter, I could just shove it before the flop. But we're not, and my hand plays fine. So I would like, because it was just a min raise, I have some hands I would like to bet out with here on the turn.
Yeah, I think this is a really clear value bet.
There we go. So this match will probably be done soon, and after that I will head out quickly. So I will say a short goodbye then, and a longer goodbye now. Thank you very much to everybody who tuned in. Thank you, Andrew, for doing this with me and talking it over with me. Thank you especially to the Alberta folks. This has been a fantastic experience. I hope I've done it justice. I hope you're not too embarrassed at my fallible meat bag play. I at least managed to pick one game up off the AI. So,
absolutely. Thank you for coming here to join us. It's been great to have you, and it's always fun to be on your show too.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. It's always great to have you on the show. Hopefully, this is not the last time you're on.
Yeah, in fact, this is probably a good time to mention we discussed, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't happen, having the Computer Poker Research Group back on the show one more time after this, no, in the future, but one more time very soon after this match to kind of debrief. And I believe, and maybe in between the matches, Michael, you can say a little bit about this. There's going to be a way for us to sort of look at, essentially to have DeepStack assess how well we played versus how lucky we got.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that. After the match day too, we're going to be able to release all the hand histories, so people can go and look over the hands that were played. And we have some of our variance reduction tools that go over the match and subtract some of the luck out, so we can get a better estimate of who is actually deserves to be ahead. So yeah, we can run that analysis too before we come back on the show.
Thanks so much. That's great. I am both excited and absolutely terrified to see the results of that analysis.
Yeah, again, Michael actually asked me in the Google Hangouts chat. He was like, "Do you think Nate would mind if we just?" Because I was like, "Oh, it's probably fine if you release the hands." He's like, "Well, can I announce it, or should we check with Nate?" And I was like, "It's probably fine. Just announce it."
No, just announce it. It's absolutely fine. We're doing it for science. This is all great and fantastic. But since the theme of the evening is meatbags versus computer, I have all these meatbag feelings. I'm opening myself up to public shame. Doug Polk and other people who are much more ripped than I am. It's gonna be pumping a barbell with one hand and explaining how stupid I am with the other and with his mouth. Oh, here we go. All right, there's some hope for me yet. Boy, I don't have a lot of raising hands here. I do have a lot of small suited hearts. I could see this going either way. I would probably raise. Yeah, I think I've got a raising hand here.
We've talked a lot about hands like this on the podcast, and in situations where ranges are not as wide, that's very typically a hand that I play as a check call. Yeah. But as ranges get wider, there's just more hands that you could potentially bluff with, and your opponent is increasingly incentivized to call with worse hands, such that with narrower ranges, Queen 6 is not expect to be that far ahead of a range that calls a check raise, but in a heads-up match, I certainly could see it going either way, and I would expect that DeepStack probably plays a mixed strategy.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny.
Bottom pair with this check raise too.
Yeah. given how often we've publicly discussed how you shouldn't just automatically put money into the pot with those hands, it's funny that I am in fact shoveling money into the pot with that hand.
And in fact, the hand that folded to you is a hand that's drawing very, very slim against your holding.
That is right. So here I'm just going to call. Good turn. Or a bad turn? It's a good turn. I picked up equity, but wow. So here's a good example of picking up equity, but not just blindly shoveling money into the pot. I think a call is a lot better than a raise.
Yeah, I think you're still ahead of some hands that it's value betting, but you will not be ahead if a check raise is called.
Well, I just got halfway there against a lot of kings, so hooray for that. I think I should start with a check. 9-8. Okay, there we go. I'm winning. I think I've got a betting hand here. And now I have a giving up hand, I think. little tempted to bluff the river now.
Yeah, I think when you get to the river with 8 high, whoa. So like it can still have some like 10 and 9 high that it's folding.
Yeah.
Which is why it's calling with ace high.
Speaking of being at the bottom of your range, although this is not the bottom of my range, this is actually not the bottom of my range. I'm going to check and hope for a check back.
I'm going to go refill my water before your match is over, Nate.
All right. But hurry. And again, as the blinds get large and the stacks get short, hopefully deep stack skill edge over me will decrease. And I'm min raised, so I'm limping some hands, min raising other hands. I'm not jamming with any hands yet. I don't think we're just a little bit too deep for that. But soon, my choices will be between, folding, limping, and open jamming. In case you're wondering, the amount of time DeepStack takes does not reveal anything about the strength of its cards, as the Alberta folks have frequently reminded us. It figures out what it's doing with every part of its range first, and only at the end does it check exactly where it is in its range. So I can't infer anything from the amount of time it takes, say, to call that pre-flop min raise. And here I think I have to call. I just have a pure bluff catcher. Not a pure bluff catcher, but a bluff catcher. And against a weaker opponent, I might value bet here, but here I think I have a clear check. And I held up.
Well done.
Thanks. I'm very happy to have made it to the almost flipping coins portion of this heads-up match. And if I can win 2 out of 3, I'll be very proud of myself.
As you should be.
Yeah. I've been running at about 500 against DeepStack in testing. Check. I can still bluff later if I like. Possibly we've lost the Alberta folks.
Yeah, I heard something.
All right, what you got, DeepStack? It's interesting that it's...
I had a feeling you were going to get jumped on here.
That's a pretty clear shoving hand, I think.
Yeah.
I'm interested that it took so long to determine its ranges there.
Yeah, I remember you said something interesting when we were testing this, that DeepStack can actually it could actually slow roll you just because it doesn't, at least as I understand, the way it works, it doesn't like realize immediately that like aces is obviously a calling hand. If you shove pre-flop, it's still going to have to kind of like crunch, like, or play out the game and realize like, oh, the nuts is probably a pretty good hand to call with here.
Yeah, that's right. This is something we talked about while you were off getting your water.
Okay.
I was explaining why I wasn't inferring anything from the amount of time DeepStack was taking.
Yeah.
If I get raised here, I'll be sick. I think it's interesting. I think I have a call here. He appeals a lot with no pair. It's an interesting card. Check behind. Okay. Nice value bet. Cool. Nice value bet. Deep stack. All right. It's really amazing that DeepStack is getting very good approximations on the fly for things that used to be the subjects of like coveted appendices, like it's amazing to me. Like there's a whole Q&A section in one of some book, maybe one of the Chiafone books about like facing a pre-flop all-in decision for 11 or 12 blinds or something. And like they got all the experts and, like long back and forth. Huh. I could see a case for folding, calling, or raising.
I was gonna say, how bad can check shoving be?
It can be pretty bad if you get called with a lot of aces. Yeah, it can't be that bad.
Your equity against like ace-7 is fine.
Yeah, I think so. Check. Yeah, that's right. And I probably would check shove with like 3-4 or with hearts, hands like that. I'm going to do this. It's a good idea. Nice.
There we go.
There we go. There's one for the meat bags. I'm going to try to sneak in a limp here. Probably won't work, but maybe it will. If I see a flop, it's fantastic. And I will limp here sometimes with strong hands. I've got some backdoors. I think this is an okay hand to bluff. Oh, no.
Yeah, that is bad. But I think that, it's a bad outcome, but I think the 10 is not a great card to have in your hand after bluffing the flop, because I think some of his check folds are, busted gutters, the king 10, jack 10 kind of hands that you don't want to be blocking.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just be a shove pre.
It could just be a shove pre, but I'd like to keep a couple. Yeah. If I'm shoving or folding, it's a shove. Certainly not folding. Nice. And half pot will get me all in easily.
No.
If I get called. Half pot is a good bet size, is my point. Here's a good hand to move all in with, as opposed to limping.
So someone asked, what is, if we can explain the concept of board coverage. Do you want to take a stab at that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. I could, but I'm busy playing. Why don't you?
Yeah, so the idea is that as much as possible, and this is a person with whom I've been discussing the concept of the ace king queen game and sort of playing a polarized range against a capped range. So the idea is that as much as possible, you want to avoid ending up in situations where a particular flop or turn or river is obviously good or obviously bad for you, because ending up in those spots, the spots where it's obviously good, it becomes possible for your opponent to make a lot of tight folds and hero checks and whatnot against you, and it's essentially you're missing out on good bluffing opportunities if you're not getting to those streets with some potential bluffs. And conversely, you want to avoid ending up in spots as much as possible where a particular card is obviously bad for you, because that enables your opponent to play very aggressively, both for thin value. If it can say, you never have a straight here, then it can confidently bet a set, as though it were the nuts. And it also can do a lot of bluffing, and including overbetting against you in those situations. And so it's not surprising that there are probably a lot of situations like that humans have difficult. Like, some of them are obvious. Some of them are sort of like, well, we know if there's two hearts on the flop, we want to make sure that whether we bet the flop or check the flop, if the turn is a heart, we want to be capable of having flushes. Like, that's the sort of thing that's not too difficult for a human to wrap their head around.
Yeah, can I just say that DeepStack is min-raising me with 6 big blinds?
Yeah.
I could calling is possibly defensible, but I would rather just move all in.
Give him a stop and go.
Wow.
Would have been either way.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. It's been a pleasure. I don't know why DeepStack did that. I really don't. One more discussion question. Again, thank you all. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Alberta folks. Certainly thank you to everybody watching. And $100 from me to the Boston Debate League. I'm looking forward to paying that bet off. Take care, everybody.
Well played. You got it in good, and the most important poker skill of all is sucking out, and DeepStack does seem to have that in spades.
Take care. I hope you come back and win.
Have fun, Nate.
Yeah.
Cool. See you, Nate. Thanks for playing. Okay, so we're going to get you set up in your match here. I think on the stream we're just changing that over now. You probably have to log out of your match, hey?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I should now log in with my original login information.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, let's see if we can get this on the first try. Blammo. I'm still, okay, if I click restart match. All right, and now it looks like I'm good to go.
Okay, great.
From my end anyway. You got everything streaming as you need it?
Yep, we're good over here.
Awesome. So just to finish my thought quickly, I think that there are certain situations where humans are pretty capable of anticipating that a particular turn card is going to be very meaningful, but particularly when it comes to like pre-flop action in the 3-bet pot, it could be difficult for us to imagine certain like flop turn river combinations such that we might end up, without realizing it, with an overly strong or overly weak range. And it's hard for me to give examples of this, situations that humans wouldn't conceive of, because kind of by definition I can't necessarily conceive of them or intuit them very well. But I think the idea that what Nate and I are postulating anyway is that DeepStack is kind of capable of accounting for situations like that, or devising a strategy that will account for situations like that, and it'll avoid ending up in some spots, or it'll have a more balanced range getting to some spots that I don't even necessarily realize or am able to anticipate in advance that I would have an unbalanced range for getting to. Okay, so I've raised pre-flop. I flopped an extremely strong hand. Betting right away. There might be a case for sometimes checking kings. This could actually play into the concept of board coverage a bit, but I think I probably want to start out by betting. I'm not going to use a particularly large bet size. Certainly don't mind giving my opponent a price with draws, although I think that DeepStack is going to be quite capable of taking into the account that I might have trips when I bet. I think the 10 is a pretty nice card in terms of still leaving a lot of hands that are going to want to call bets. Like Queen 10 will likely be willing to call another bet. Ace 10 will likely be willing to call another bet. I think I want to size up my bet a little bit here. I think that I do. Not surprised to see him folding that hand. That seems like pretty reasonable play on DeepStack's part. A couple differences in terms of how I'm going to approach the match from how it seemed like Nate was, and I hinted at these while he was playing. I'm coming into this on the assumption that I'm going to be a weaker player than DeepStack is, and I don't want to do anything that's really contrary to the spirit of the game, like just go all in for 200 big blinds pre-flop or something. I mean, for one thing, I think that I'm not such a weak player that that's going to be my my strongest option, but I am going to do a little bit more to try to force some larger pre-flop pots. I think that I know it's something when I'm the superior player playing against someone where I think I have an edge, I tend not to 3-bet very often, and I sort of don't like it when my opponent 3-bets very much because it decreases the significance of post-flop play. And in this case, I would like to decrease the significance of post-flop play. I'm reasonably confident in my ability to make pre-flop decisions. I think there are a lot of post-flop spots where I'm making mistakes that I don't even realize that DeepStack is not going to make. And consequently, forcing more of the action to happen pre-flop, I think, is going to be somewhat to my advantage. I also think Jack-10 suited is just a hand that plays very well with DeepStacks, even in the 3-bet pot. Checking the flop, this is a hand I'll often bluff later on later streets if I get the opportunity, but it's not a great bluffing hand on the flop. I think despite turning a pair, I still want to fold. I talked about some spots like this with Nate, but it's one of those where against any made hand, I'm in really bad shape, and even his bluffs are just going to have so much equity against me, plus the ability to keep barreling future streets that I don't really see how I can continue. 9-6 offsuit, not a great hand to be playing out of position deep, but I think the price on getting pre-flop is simply too high. Against some humans, I would feel confident betting here. I think DeepStack's is going to mix up its play a little better than that, such that betting can put me in some pretty nasty spots. You might think, well, don't I want to bet here because I want to protect against flush draws and straight draws and that kind of thing. But I actually don't think he's going to make a lot of folding mistakes. If he has a hand like Queen Jack, it's not like he's going to fold it when I bet the turn. I'm just going to have increasingly difficult decisions on future streets. This is probably just going to be a check fold. Yeah, I mean, I think my hand was a little too good to turn into a bluff there. There might even be a case along the lines of what I was saying about forcing big pre-flop pots. I think there might even be a case for choosing a 4x open raising size. I have not put a lot of thought into what a 4x button open raising range might be. I'm more comfortable playing a 3x button opening range. Not that I've done a lot of theoretical work on that, but just it's a raise size that I often use in real heads-up matches, and so I think I do have some feel for what a 3x opening range ought to look like. Don't think 10-4 offsuit belongs in there. Very poor hand. One interesting concept, and this is another thing that I hinted at during the conversation with Nate, is that I don't think with deep stacks you have that much incentive to mix up your play pre-flop by flatting big pairs. And the main reason for that is that even if I never flat call with a hand like Queen's pre-flop, the flop tends to do enough to scramble ranges that it's difficult for my opponent to say, well, Andrew would not have flat called pre-flop with Queens, Kings, Aces, therefore this is just a horrible flop for him. There are really not very many flops that fall into that category. For the most part, I'll be capable of flopping strong hands just because of the possibility of flopping like top pairs and sets and big draws, and there's so many other kinds of strong hands you can flop that I don't think you're giving up very much with deeper stacks by not flatting big pairs. When you're shallower, there might be more of a case for slow playing bigger pairs pre-flop. I actually don't see a tremendous amount of value in betting here, even though it kind of looks like I have a good draw. I don't really anticipate folding out ace-x. Getting check raised here can be pretty bad. King X might fold, but overall I think a lot of the hands I'm folding out are hands that I'm ahead of anyway. I think the same thing is true on the turn. I'm just not going to cause a lot of better hands to fold. Against the larger bet size I would fold. I think there's enough of a chance that deep stack is just betting a 5 or a 4, which I have pretty good equity against. I also think I'll be able to bluff clubs because I have the queen of clubs in my hand. So I think I can call and bluff if the river is a club. I think my implied odds on a 3 can be pretty good also, because there's going to be a straight on the board. There's actually a chance I have the best hand here. The 6 is probably blocking some of the hands that would have bluffed into me, but I think I actually have enough showdown value to check. I could be wrong about that. I don't think he was going to fold that hand anyway. Michael, I have a question for you if you're up for talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was your thoughts while Nate and I were talking, just in terms of sort of like the level where a lot of our strategy talk was at? Were there things that you were curious about, or you thought we were wrong about, or?
So to be honest, okay, so there's, how many of us? 10 of us behind DeepStack? I think of that 10, 2 of us play poker recreationally, and the other 8 don't play at all. I'm one of the 8 that doesn't play it at all.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I can kind of follow the action as it goes, but strategically, yeah, no, I wasn't really following a lot of what you guys were saying.
And this is really interesting, because I think until recently there was an assumption, and I shared this until I kind of came to understand the concept of machine learning, that a computer could not be better at the game than the person who programmed it. And I don't think you'll be insulted if we say that that's clearly the case here, that DeepStack is a far better player than any of the people who are involved in creating it.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So DeepStack was, and the people most responsible for it are 2 of our co-authors that are from Prague. So one is Czech, one's Slovakian. I had just a minor role on this paper, but if I think to like our previous paper, like Cepheus, where we solved heads up limit, yeah, that one we were able to get to, actual very close to perfect play in heads up limit, and none of the authors on that one, played more than 20 hands, and that's it. So yeah, the algorithm that it uses, it just learns to play these games just by playing against itself over and over. And once you're doing that, yeah, it can learn how to bluff and how to slow play and do all these things without ever, without us ever having to explicitly tell it. So yeah, it can learn things that we don't know.
Which really is how, well, maybe it's not. I mean, to some extent, it's how humans learn also. It's just kind of from playing a lot of hands. It's just that it's able to really condense that. And also, I mean, it's not just random, right? Like it is kind of playing in a way that enables it to learn faster than if it were just purely running out billions of combinations, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for Cepheus for heads up limit really did learn just by grinding out billions and billions of games. Mm-hmm. But yeah, DeepStack is a bit different. It uses a type of AI that's called deep learning. And for that one, it's able to get some intuition about how much money it deserves to win on each board. It can use that while it's playing against you to kind of decide what actions to take. So it's less about this, upfront grind of thousands of years of computation, and more about just doing quick reasoning as it plays.
So I'm a little unsure here whether I should be check calling or check raising. I'm not sure with stacks this deep, whether this is a hand I can put in 20 times the pot. I'm inclined to say that it is. I have a pretty good kicker. I think ace queen would certainly be a hand that I could check raise. Queen deuce would certainly not be a hand I would want to check raise. Queen jack seems, well, it's obviously a lot closer to ace queen than it is to queen deuce. Yeah, for better or for worse, I'm going to go for a check raise. I think if I don't use a particularly large size, it's a little easier to include more value hands in my check raising range. And DeepStack just snap clicks back on me. So I don't think this is a hand that I can 4-bet for value. This could even end up being a match that's over pretty quickly if DeepStack has managed to trips me here. It might seem weird that I'm thinking in those terms already, but I think that once it 3-bets the flop, I think that Queen Jack is just a bluff catcher. It's a very good bluff catcher because it blocks a lot of the hands that are better than Queen Jack, like Ace Queen and King Queen and Queen 4. But I don't think that DeepStack is going to be 3-betting and stacking off with Queen 8. I could be wrong about that, but that's my guess. So this is sort of interesting now. I'm trying to think about what my range is going to be for check raise calling the flop. I guess it's like Queen X and some pocket pairs and some 4X. And in terms of DeepStack, like I'm sort of wondering what it can call a flop bet with. It's worse than my hand. I don't know that it's that likely to bluff if I check, but I also don't know that it's that likely to call a bet. I guess I'm just going to, often the way I handle these situations where I'm pretty sure I have the best hand, but it's hard for me to imagine what my opponent would call with that's worse. I tend to just use small bet sizing, which makes sense because it's difficult for me to balance this with bluffs. I'm very rarely bluffing in the situation, which means that I have to give my opponent good pot odds in order to compensate for that fact. So I'm going to make a relatively small bet on the river, and we'll see how well this works against DeepStack. So it did just have it had a couple of backdoors when it 3-bet the flop, which I suppose is a fine flop 3-betting range. I'm not really sure, to be honest, what kinds of hands are the best bluffing hands to 3-bet that flop with. It's not a play that I make very often. It does make me glad that I check raised the Queen Jack, though, because I ended up getting in 2 bets against the hand that was drawing almost dead against me. Hard to say whether it would have bluffed the river if checked too. I wouldn't be surprised if checking is the better play on the river. I feel like humans just don't bluff in that situation because a human is pretty unlikely to call the flop with a hand that wouldn't be able to call the river, wouldn't be likely to call the river. But I mean, that's just that's a human exploit. That's very obviously not balanced. Don't see a lot of reason to bet here. I don't think a lot of better hands are folded to a bet. All I've done is raise pre-flop, so I can easily have 7 high, 9 high, 8 high, 10 high, jack high. All of those hands want to bluff a lot more than Queen 4 does. So I think I'm going to end up over bluffing if I'm betting when I have a queen in my hand. I think my hand is not going to be strong enough to value bet, even when DeepStack checks to me. A queen with a better kicker, maybe, but I think it's not impossible that DeepStack is checking a king or an ace. It's going to check it down. Yep. Nice. Check. Meat bag. Suited aces do make really good 3-betting hands. I don't know that I want to 3-bet them 100% of the time, though. And I would rather have either a larger kicker or a wheel draw when I 3-bet. So for better or for worse, I think I'm going to flat with this one. That's an interesting flop. Probably nut flush draws are going to want to play a mix of bets, check calls, and check raises. The one thing I would never do with this hand is check fold it. Because of what I've said about kind of wanting to force big pots against DeepStack, I think I'm going to prefer the check raising line. I think it's a strong enough hand to jam if DeepStack were to 3-bet my flop check raise. In fact, that's kind of what I'm hoping will happen. When he checks back, I think that I often have the best hand. I don't think he's going to fold very many better hands to a bet. So I'm just going to check again, expect that I can win in a lot of pots that go check, check, and also expect that I can profitably bluff catch if I face a bet. I'm very happy to call here. Don't see a lot of value in raising. Third diamond on the river is interesting. I think that I would be betting a lot of my diamond draws on the turn. Hands. Yeah, I mean, there are probably some other flush draws I would check on the turn, but I'm going to bet most of my diamond draws on the turn, which means I think this is actually a river card that favors DeepStack more than it favors me. And that makes me want to try to check raise the river rather than bet out. I think DeepStack is going to have a lot of incentive to bet worse hands for value and also to bluff when I check. Nice. Okay, so this is a good feeling to face an overbet when you're holding the nuts. I don't think there's really a reason for me to do anything other than go all in. Make sure I get my hotkey right for going all in. I don't want to misclick and blow this beautiful opportunity for team meet. Okay, N is going to be all in. Nice. Interesting that he's trying to 2x pot. So this goes to my point about me thinking this is probably a pretty bad card for me in general. The fact that DeepStack thinks that it can overbet 2x pot with a straight and still be in good shape when it's called leads me to think that I'm not really supposed to have a lot of flushes in my range. Michael, have you guys, I'm sure you guys have played against DeepStack yourselves, but do you find that interesting, or do you feel like you don't even really know enough about poker to know how to approach it?
It's a good question. At least for me, I haven't. Sorry, I'll just show you in the room here. So I have Dustin and Nolan, who are, Dustin's a PhD student working on this. Nolan finished his PhD last year. But the three of us are some of the non-poker players.
Wait, so really, you haven't played against it at all?
I haven't. Either of you?
Seriously, really?
Here and there, but not even as extensively as you.
Yeah.
Wow, how could you make a toy this cool and not want to play around with it?
Like I mentioned, we do have two people in the group that are more poker players. So 1 second, I'm going to see if they're online. I'll find out if they've played much. I'll get back to you in a minute.
All right. In situations where ranges aren't so wide, a second pair hand will often feel more like kind of a medium strength hand that you should be pot controlling and trying to take the showdown. But heads up, second pair, it makes a difference what your kicker is, but I think my opponent's going to be incentivized to call with a lot of hands that are weaker than mine. Dominated 8s, 6, 7, maybe also 5, 6, and 5, 7. So I think that although I would probably not try to value bet 8, 5, I think King 8 is a strong enough hand to value bet. That is not a good turn card. Many of the hands I was ahead of on the flop are Queen 10, Queen Jack, Jack 10, which I'm now losing, So this is going to be a check and hope that I can go to showdown against an 8, 5. 7 is another bad. Well, it's not that bad. 8, 7 gets there. I guess other than that, it doesn't really matter. I think I certainly have enough showdown value to check, and I don't think my hand is strong enough to value bet. Perfect. 8, 5. I called it. Maybe this thing is more predictable than you guys think. We're looking here, effective stack size of about 40 big blinds. I've been using pretty large 3-bet sizes, and I've talked about my reasons for that. I also think there's a case for making a larger raise relative to your opponent's original open if the original open was a min raise. So even if I make it 1,600 here, there'll be 2,000 in the pot and 1,200 for him to call. So he'll be getting almost 2 to 1. Maybe I don't want to make it quite that large, but I think I will make it 1,400.
I have an answer for you on our teammates.
Okay, great.
So yeah, of the ones that play poker, one of the guys played a couple of the freeze outs, and earlier when we had the fixed stack version of it, played a little bit against that. Most of the rest of us have not, other than just testing. The freeze out version we all played a bit more against, just for fun because we knew we could get lucky and win. Whereas the fixed stack one, we know it's just a grind, we're going to lose.
Well, and is it fun for you to play? I mean, it can't be that fun, or you probably would have done more of it.
I think for me, my level of poker knowledge is about like leaning on the all-in button. That's it.
Yeah, that's
that's
what so like I can kind of understand why it would be fun to play against human, like human versus human is fun in a way that like playing against a machine, if you don't really know how to think about balancing your play, like for me, it's kind of an interesting test of like how well can I balance my play. But I feel like if you wouldn't even know how to approach that question, it's just like I can imagine it just not being interesting because you just know it's going to sort of smash you, and there's not a lot you can do about it.
Yep. Oh yeah, just bad coin flips.
Oh man. Maybe I shouldn't. I really don't know how to play against like 40 big blinds all ineffective pre. Like that was not a hand I was expecting to see. Ace-8 suited didn't feel that strong to me, but I might just be badly underestimating how strong of a hand I had there. I think this is a reasonable check-raising hand. I would like it better if I held a heart. Okay, fortunately I didn't have to do that. Do you think my opponent has a lot of ace-x that would check back the flop? Not having a heart in my hand is bad. I think we'll check, and if it goes check-check, I think this is a reasonable river bluffing hand. And I'll just fold to a bet. So now I think that I do want to bluff just so that my opponent can't win at showdown with 7 high or 8 high or 9 high. And this is something we never saw Nate do. Nate was consistently betting like 3/4 of the pot on the theory that DeepStack is sticky. My guess is that even facing a min bet, hands like 7 and 8 and 9 high are not going to call. So I'm going to try just betting the minimum. The hands all right, so I'm not surprised to see King High call. I don't think that really disproves or makes necessarily. There's a good chance King High would have folded to a larger bet, but of course, when it doesn't fold, we lose more with a larger bet. So I think, given that I don't need very strong hands at all to fold to make betting profitable, that's my reasoning anyway for choosing a very small bet size. Is that even if my opponent folds only very weak hands, it's still a profitable bet for me because I cannot even beat very weak hands, and I risk, of course, very little to attempt that bluff. So as a non-poker player, Michael, is it interesting to watch us play, or is this work for you?
Oh no, absolutely, this is fun.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Not that you're the primary audience, but I would like you to enjoy yourself.
I get far more satisfaction from watching other people play DeepStack than I do from playing it myself. Because like you said, I'm not really in the poker space enough to really appreciate the learning opportunity that you can have with it, whereas watching you guys play and hearing the commentary is super fun. So
Great.
Nice.
It's kind of tempting to 3-bet this hand because I think it'll play okay when it's called. But I really don't want to face a 4-bet shove because I think I'm going to end up folding equity. Like my equity against ace queen or pocket sevens or something is pretty good, but I don't think I want to just 3-bet get it in here. So for better or for worse, I'm going to just call. It's possible that I'm overestimating the risk, but it turns out I'm really good at fluffing trips. So there's something to be said for that. My understanding is that with shallower stack sizes, there's more of a case for the out of position player to have a betting range, even though I was not the pre-flop raiser. And this seems like the kind of hand I might sometimes want in there because it's actually pretty bad for me if my opponent manages to take a free card with ace-jack or jack-10 or something like that. I mean, they're not hands that have a lot of outs against me, but at the same time, I am interested in charging them something. And it's not trivial for my opponent to fold to this bet because, of course, I could see the flop with lots of weak hands that I just called a minimum raise with, and so my opponent can't just fold when I bet 600, or else I could just make that same play with 6-5 or something. And I could try to choose bet sizes that would enable me to get all in by the river. That might be a little ambitious. Not that I wouldn't be good if it happened, but I still think it might not happen that often. So if I were to bet pot, there would be like 58 left in the stacks. That seems like a little much. And with my draws, I might want to leave a little bit more money behind so that I wouldn't face a turn shove so often. I think for better or for worse, I'm just going to bet half pot. On really blank rivers, I think I can overbet shove. Draw completing rivers are a little more complicated. So this is exactly the sort of hand where I think there's a very good chance DeepStack would have checked back the flop facing a check, but it's too strong of a hand for it to fold facing a half pot bet. So that's the sort of hand that I like making the half pot bet, in addition to some of the other hands I mentioned, like the Jack 10 that might just check back. I could see this being either a min raise or a limp. I think given DeepStack's likely superior post-flop play, we'll go with the strategy of forcing a slightly larger pre-flop pot. And this is the kind of spot where I would say I think it's kind of contrary to the spirit of the game, and in any event, it's not very fun for me or anyone else. It could be correct at this stack size for me to just sort of go all in quite a lot, even with hands that are like slightly negative EV to do that with, and just expect that like seeing a flop against DeepStack is also slightly negative EV, and slightly negative EV might be the best I can hope for against DeepStack. Don't think this is a good hand to bet the flop with, not even any backdoors. Checking the flop does not forfeit my ability to bluff on future streets. This is another thing that I don't want to be too critical of Nate's play. I think overall he played very well, but just in terms of things that I would do differently than he did, I think he did a lot of flop bluffing and not a lot of thinking in terms of like, even if you have a hand that you are pretty sure you're going to want to bluff with, you do want to think about not just what is my flop bluffing range, but also what is my range for checking flop and bluffing turn, or checking twice and bluffing river. I think there were some hands that Nate chose to bluff the flop with that, for better or for worse, I probably would have chosen a different betting line. This hand will play well as a call. I think it probably has enough equity to just jam pre-flop. We're looking at less than 30 big blinds effective. And this one does not feel like it's going to be contrary to the spirit of the game for me to just ship it. Could be getting slow rolled by aces here, or ace king. Okay. That one, obviously, I would have lost less if I had seen the flop, but there's also the possibility that he has, or DeepStack has 10-5 or something, and I end up check folding the best hand on the flop. I am flopping well. The king 10 versus ace king was a cooler. I don't know that it had to be a cooler for quite as much as it was, but other than that, I'm flopping pretty darn well. I'm going to be pretty depolarized in betting this flop. I mean, there's a lot of different sorts of hands I would want to bet the flop with, so I don't think I want to use a particularly large bet size. Well, Michael, when you all are talking about DeepStack amongst yourselves, do you find yourself anthropomorphizing it, or is it sort of grating to you to hear us say, you know, he would do this, he thinks this, that kind of thing?
That's a good question. Yeah, for sure we say things like, you know, it'll do this, it'll do that, as if it's a person.
And I know when you were on the blog, which, by the way, yeah, when you guys were on the podcast, rather, we talked about at length about whether intuition was an appropriate term to use.
Yeah. Even then, even for DeepStack here, it's, you know, still a metaphor, right? We say it has this intuition about how much value it'll get on certain streets, but you know, in reality, yeah, that's just a giant lookup table of numbers, and a neural net that does the estimate. So. It's tough not to, though, right? Like with anything in AI, when it starts acting the same way that a human or an animal would, it's tough not to attribute some intelligence to it.
Right. All right. So this is a kind of non-trivial hand. I suggested this a few times when Nate was playing this idea of betting the flop with hands that are kind of not, they have a lot of equity, but are not good enough to check call or check raise. And I think this hand falls into that category. There's also a lot of pretty good turn cards for me, like a club that I could keep barreling on. I think the 4 is actually kind of an interesting turn card. I don't think I have the very best, I don't think I have the best hand very often when I turn a 4, certainly not enough to check and call a bet. But I think that the 4 does mean that I'm blocking hands like Jack 4, 9 4, 8 4, which I do think are hands that DeepStack could have, and they are some of the hands that will be most interested in calling a large bet on the turn. I'm actually wondering whether I might even want to overbet here. So if I had the nuts and wanted to try to get all in, betting 5,600 here would leave a pot-sized bet on the turn. I don't think I want to overbet to quite that degree. Betting 4,200 would put still about a pot-sized bet in the stacks. Let's go with, so I'm trying to set this up so that if I were to shove the river, I'd be betting a similar fraction of the pot on both streets. I think this is going to accomplish that. Okay, turns out I was dead. Still, that's a hand that I could have lost the pot to had I checked. DeepStack could have bet with that and I would have lost. As the stacks have gotten shallower, you see I've shifted towards a min-raising strategy. To be honest, that was not well thought out. As I got into conversation with Michael and otherwise got distracted by thinking, this is something I'll often do against human players, this shift to a lower stack size, because again, often I'm not trying to force large pre-flop pots against humans. I think against DeepStack, I actually am going to try to go back to maybe 1.5 or 2.5xing it pre-flop. Top pair and a flush draw is a hand that I like to check on the flop a lot, especially when it's neither a particularly good top pair nor a particularly good flush draw. Both of those things will be good a lot less often if the pot stays small. If the pot gets large, I'm less likely to have the best hand if the turn is a club, and I'm less likely to win at showdown. So I don't think there's a lot of bad turn cards for me. That happens to be one of them, but my hand is relatively safe, so I don't benefit a lot from betting, and I can end up in some bad spots if, for instance, I'm check raised. I still think I have some check down value. I even think I have a value betting hand when it gets to the river. Not that DeepStack couldn't possibly have worse, but I think it's easy enough for me to have nothing here that DeepStack is going to be forced to call bet with hands that are worse than the hand I'm holding right now. Can't use a particularly large bet size for that. I think half pot is probably pretty safe. And folded bottom pair. That's the sort of hand, I mean, I'm not surprised to see a fold, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it had called with bottom pair. So I mentioned I wanted to move back to a slightly larger raise size. Let's do that. That is not a good flop for ace three of clubs. I don't think it's very likely that ace high is going to get to showdown when it's the best hand, meaning DeepStack will very frequently bluff with worse, and I will not be able to call. However, I also don't think this is a very good bluffing candidate, so I'm going to check and kind of pray that DeepStack lets me show this down, even though it probably won't. It's so tempting, I guess just because I'm accustomed to playing against humans. I'm still very stuck in terms of thinking about timing tails and like not wanting to just instantly check when I have a hand I'm trying to get to showdown. But of course, against DeepStack, it doesn't matter. And I'll do my best not to waste your time in that matter in the future. King Jack offsuit's a pretty strong hand, especially if I don't get 4-bet. Right, if I flop a king or a jack in a 3-bet pot, I'll be able to play for stacks. I will fold to a 4-bet. And sometimes I'll fold a lot of equity to a 4-bet. But That's pretty good. This is one of those, even though it's a good flop, you don't really benefit from betting. Better hands aren't folding. You're not going to be ahead if a bet is called. Human players won't have a lot of ace-x here. I think humans probably, this is the guess, shove ace-x more than they should because it can be a difficult hand to play on the flop. DeepStack is not going to have the same difficulty playing that hand on the flop. Or it'll have some of the same difficulties, but not all of them. I think I'm going to check one more time, and if it goes check, check, I will value bet probably any river. Can't really think of a river that would be bad to value bet. Okay, so hands that I would 3-bet and then get to the river with that could bluff. 9-8 suited, 5-6 suited, 5-4 suited. The 10, it's not really a bad card in the sense that I don't think it improves many hands to beat me. It's a bad card in that it improves some of the hands that I could otherwise have bluffed with on the river, which makes it harder for me to balance a river bet with bluffs. The upshot of all that is I don't think I can use a very large bet size here. If I bet, yes, I mean, that's the kind of hand, I guess I'm not surprised to see DeepStack fold that even to a relatively small bet. But the point is, if I want to incentivize DeepStack to call with worse than King Jack, I need to give it pretty good pot odds because it's a difficult spot for me to bluff. And when I talk in terms of, I would have 3-bet this hand, I would have 3-bet that hand. DeepStack is not thinking about, Andrew has been 3-betting a lot of suited connectors, so that's the kind of hand he could bluff with here. I guess when I say I would have 3-bet, I mean like these are hands that it makes sense to 3-bet. Or, I mean, there are reasons. It's not just purely a question of style. There are reasons why aces and kings and tens tend to predominate in 3-betting ranges, and why, in order to get to that river with a lot of weak hands that want to bluff, I would have to be making, I think, some pre-flop mistakes with my 3-betting range, and DeepStack is going to how can I explain this? It's not going to be assuming that I'm making that kind of mistake or any kind of mistake. I think this is still a hand that's too good to turn into a bluff. There's a chance of bluffing the river is the correct play, but I'm just going to do the safe form. Yeah, so that's exactly the sort of hand that I might want to try to bluff him off of on the river. That could easily be one of those I'm overestimating how much showdown value I have kind of hands. This is a strong enough hand to check and call the flop with. Maybe I should just do that. Yeah, I was thinking about betting, but I guess I'll just check and call. It's a nice safe meat bag play. I have ace-x in my range. DeepStack actually might. Right, well, this is a good example. We had a question before about board coverage. This is a good example where I would expect not a lot of humans would be potting an ace on the flop. I really have no idea how often DeepStack is potting ace-x on the flop. So against a lot of humans, I would assume that ace is a better card for the player who check called the flop. But it's a good example of a kind of board coverage spot that I think DeepStack might account for better than a human player would. I'm just going to hope that my 10 has some showdown value. I'm surprised DeepStack did not bluff with 5 high on the river.
Yeah, so Andrew, just on the call, we just had Michael Boland join us.
Yes, I saw that. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Andrew. It's 1:45 a.m. in Prague, so I should probably be sleeping, but you're riveting to watch, so I keep watching.
I'm flattered. I was just thinking I probably should pick up the pace slightly.
One of the things I find fascinating with watching you play is as being one of the other non-poker players when I play, is when I flop a flush, I get really excited. And it seems like you, within a few seconds, immediately switch to how do I get as much money out of this hand as I can.
Yeah, let me actually address that. And this is actually a decision I need to think about.
I mean, I can't
So I
distract you here.
checked the checked the flop and the turn, hoping that I could just go check on the river. DeepStack is pretty good at thin value betting. I'm not sure. So I mean, the 9 is kind of relevant in that I'm blocking flushes. I don't know how relevant that really is. I'm gonna fold. I don't know if that's right. Sorry, go on, Michael.
It looks like you made the right choice.
You were just explaining how riveting I am. Please continue.
I just like how you switch so quickly to not getting giddy over landing good cards. Just switch to immediately, well, how can I extract value out of this?
Yeah, this is a big thing that I talk to, especially when I'm doing poker coaching. I think I really, as much as possible, try not to approach poker as a gambling game, or a game where I'm there to sort of I want to win, but I want to win. I want the winning to just. My strategy is to just let the winning follow good decisions. So as much as possible, I try to approach it more like a puzzle to be solved, where my goal is not my direct goal is not to win money. My direct goal is to solve the puzzle, and that helps to deal, because there is a lot of it can cause problems if you get excited in poker. It can, of course, also cause problems if you get frustrated when things are going badly for you. And so as much as possible, I try to take the day-to-day ups and downs out of it and just sort of focus on finding the right play. Speaking of which, this is another tricky situation to find the right play. With deeper stacks, I would like to check raise, because the backdoor nut flush draw would be a very valuable thing. But with such a shallow stack, that's not so much the case. I think I want to call once. Right now I'm kind of blocking his bluffing range, but I think that in terms of bluff catching on future streets, I will be blocking some of his nutted range. I guess what I'm contemplating then is that I'm going to be calling another bet if the turn is a diamond. That feels sort of dicey to me. Not having an overcard to the 6 makes me a little uncomfortable. My equity would be better here if I had like ace 7 with the ace of diamonds, such that I had more outs against the 6. This is one of those, I feel like calling the flop in a vacuum is certainly profitable, but I'm going to get outplayed on future straights when I do this. I feel like my decision is going to be difficult on almost any turn card except for an ace. I'm actually going to do a pretty cowardly thing and fold here. I didn't want to see that. The more he's betting hands like that, the worse that fold becomes. So that's the kind of thing that frustrates me more than losing a big pot is feeling like I may have made the wrong decision. And like a situation where I kind of suspected that I was making the wrong decision and and then got shown proof of that. And by proof, I don't just mean that he had a bluff, but he had the kind of hand that suggests that I'm going to see a lot of that kind of hand. Such that my fold would not be good. This could be a limp. I really don't play a lot of heads-up poker anymore, and especially not a lot of shorter stacked heads-up poker. I'm a little behind the curve in terms of, I know that with shallower stacks, having a limping range is correct. I have not put a lot of thought or a lot of study into how exactly that limp range should be constructed. Jack deuce suited might just be too weak of a hand to limp, period. But we're going to go for it. I'm going to see the flop with a lot of weak hands, so I'm not going to presume that I can just bluff all of them. Could be.
So how does it feel? Sorry, if you're thinking here, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you how do you think it feels where with deep stack flashing its cards on every hand? How does that change the game for you?
I like it a lot. I think my head would just be spinning too much without it. It's helpful. I mean, I don't have the idea that I'm like getting a sense of how deep stack plays in an exploitive sense, but I do think I'm learning in the sense of just getting an idea of what good play looks like, and kind of being able to ask myself like, oh wow, that was a surprising result. Rather than concluding like this thing is terrible, rather concluding what has it learned about poker, or what can I learn about poker from that surprising result. yeah, I mean, I think playing against it would be much less interesting for me if I weren't getting to see its cards. So I've been. This is one of those cases where my ideas about poker have conflicted with some things DeepStack has done. When I get to a river with a hand this week, I basically never check it. And again, this could be one of the like DeepStack is perfectly willing to call with queen high in a way that humans are not. I've seen DeepStack check sometimes when its showdown value was really, really, really low, you know, like 5 high, 6 high. And I just don't do a lot of that. So I'm going to throw the min bet out there because I just can't help myself. And if he wants to hero me with queen high, more power. All right. See, that's the kind of hand we're trying to bluff him off of. All right. I have enough equity to get all in here. I could do that by just open shoving, but I think I'm going to raise call instead. Yeah, this is a different raise size than I've used in other instances. Of course, we don't have to be concerned about DeepStack exploiting that. It's also not going to be playing in such a way that I'm getting an exploitive benefit out of varying my bet size. How does it always manage to do like I was perfectly happy to call a shove, and then it does this, and I don't know anything about poker anymore. But humans have aces when they do this, and it's difficult to get around that fact. My plan was to call a shove, and I think doing anything else would be exploitive. I'm just making excuses for throwing money in the pot. Wow, that is a strange way to play that hand. But that's why I don't want to fold a6. I mean, if you have a hand where you're willing to put all the money in on one betting line, it doesn't make sense to not put all the money in on a different betting line. That incentivizes, like that would make it such that it would be better for your opponent to choose, you know, like he would be better off bluffing for that amount than for a larger amount. He's no longer indifferent to the bet size that he's choosing, that it's choosing. I know I didn't explain that well. Okay, that's the second time we've seen it limp call queen 9 suited for relatively large amounts. I'm kind of surprised. Like, I don't think it's a bad hand to get all in with pre-flop. I would think that it would want to do the shoving itself, but maybe that's meat bag logic. On the point about not getting excited with strong hands, you know, I also do my best not to get upset when I have bits of bad luck like that one, you know, where I get all in with the best hand and lose. And in this case, I'm actually kind of excited by it because I sort of expect to lose the deep stack anyway. So if I can lose in a way that makes me look like a skillful player, where it's like, oh, you had to get lucky to beat me, you know, that's almost the best case scenario. This isn't great, but I still think it's too strong of a hand to fold. I may block some of its bluffs, but I also block some of its value bets. Not the ideal river card. I wonder if a blocking bet is viable here. I don't know how often it's betting like a 9 or a 6 on the turn, though. I mean, if I'm checking, I'm just hoping it gives up. Don't really want to face a shove. I have 8-7 in my range. I may have 10-7 and 5-7. I'm just trying to think about how difficult, like, whether it can just kind of jam on me with impunity when I check, or if my range is actually going to be protected by the possibility of having some strong hands. There's some diamond combinations I could play this way. I mean, I guess the thing is you can't really stop it. Like betting, it can still just shove on you. So I can't really stop it from betting. I don't think it's going to be incentivized to call with a lot of hands worse than mine if I bet. So I guess I have to start by checking, and it's going to be nasty if he shoves. If it shoves, okay. Surprised I was willing to check down a hand like that, but that works. I feel like I was about to ask you a question, and then I got wrapped up in that hand. I don't know. This thing is melting my brain. Oh, right. So, Nate and I have approached this match pretty pessimistically. And, we had a little bit of experience with DeepStack and have been impressed with it. But I also just kind of came in with the baseline assumption that this thing was going to be really good. And that is, I guess, largely based on pessimism about human capacity relative to artificial intelligence. And secondly, respect for the strength of your prior work and knowing that you were capable of solving limit hold'em makes me believe you when you say we've built an artificial intelligence that's extremely good at no limit hold'em. Do you think that our pessimism is justified? And you're muted right now, by the way.
Yes. I think that there might be a fairly large gap. I mean, it's something that you guys have talked about throughout the stream. Like maybe that's just me bag thinking is your quote all the time. That I think that we're going to find that there's a pretty large gap between human play and what optimal play might look like. And I'm not arguing that DeepStack's there, but I think that gap's pretty big. And I think part of that is just because poker is such a new game in the grand scheme of things, right? Like this isn't a game where we have hundreds of years of experts having written books that everyone can build on top of. The game's really only 50 years old, and so there's the way the game evolves already. Year to year, I think is already showing that humans are constantly learning, which means that gap is big.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about that. No, that was another one of those, like, getting called there generically wouldn't be a problem for me. I was surprised by how weak of a hand it called me with. I feel like if it's calling with a hand that weak, that makes my bluff seem pretty poor.
On the stream, there was oh, go ahead.
And I'm just thinking out loud. This is probably a hand I could just shove all in pre-flop with. So this is part of the, like... that was a pretty demoralizing hand that we just played. Where I felt like I was playing pretty well, and then it made a call against me that suggests I was not playing very well. And that could be coloring my thinking. I'm kind of tempted to make it just a pretty big shove right now. And if I were feeling more confident, I might not do that, but we're going to go for it. It's not going to let me, but I have to bet my stack. Okay, sorry, you can continue with your thought, Michael. Okay, I got a shot out of it, but that is another one of those, even though I got an okay outcome, that makes my shove look poor.
Right. It's just someone on the stream had said that it would be interesting to see DeepStack's ranges. And one of the things we had contemplated was what if DeepStack, while it was playing, announced its ranges. We'd have to think about how it could do this, but generally the premise that if it's trying to do optimal game theoretic thinking, that it should just be able to tell you exactly what its range is, and you shouldn't be able to gain anything from that. I'm just curious, how would you think about, would you be able to use that information? What would you think if that was somehow available?
I would like it. It would be very difficult to absorb in real time, I think. That's been my experience looking at, I mean, you guys are probably aware there are some kind of consumer-facing GTO solvers out there, and it takes a long time to parse. If you look at a solution, it just takes a lot of work to make sense of a single solution. So it might almost just be overwhelming. I mean, we certainly couldn't do a match like this and try to make sense of all of that. I'm going to be trying to check raise all in here. We'll see if it lets me get away with that. But I would find it fascinating. I think it might be overwhelming as well. Ouch. Okay, one for the AI. That was a really unlucky turn card in that it both improved AI DeepStack's hand and also made me want to.
Yeah. I mean, one thought we had related to the range bit was that it could actually show you your percentage of winning. So this would be, DeepStack would essentially announce its range to you, and then the quick computation would say what's your chances of winning against that range. So you'd sort of get a summary stat of DeepStack's range without having to look at its individual cards it's holding.
Yeah, I could see that being a bit more useful. I think it would be helpful. Like, obviously, I shouldn't be able to learn something that I could use to exploit it, but I do think I could learn something to kind of get a better sense of how to be less exploitable against it.
Right.
I mentioned before the nut flush draw being a backdoor nut flush draw being a good check raising hand. I think ace high probably has enough showdown value to call right now, but I do think, back to the concept of board coverage, I do think that being capable of having a bare ace of hearts when the turn is a heart is also a valuable thing. So I'm gonna go for it here. And this is sort of too strong of a hand to turn into a bluff, arguably. So it's something I'm experimenting with doing for board coverage purposes. On a non-heart turn, it is not a very good hand to continue bluffing with, which is another reason why check raising the flop is sort of dicey. But there are some other backdoors I could turn as well. So now, unfortunately, I'm going to be checking and most likely just giving up. I think if it goes check-check, this could be a reasonable river bluffing hand, though. A lot of the hands I'm check raising on the flop would be good turn barreling hands. 5-4 of hearts, for instance. That is a nice river card. Okay, that's what we like to say. I definitely want to be bluffing here. I can have 4-3 and probably nut flushes, and I'm blocking DeepStack from having. In fact, this is a pretty good overbetting spot because, well, I don't block 3-4 of hearts, but I block all other effective nut combinations. So I know that DeepStack does not have the nuts, or I know it does not have an ace high flush, and it doesn't know that I know that because it doesn't know that I have the ace of hearts. I suppose it will still need a calling range that doesn't make it too profitable for me to overbet the river with the ace of hearts, but I think that this is probably a pretty good time to bet a multiple of the pot. I have no idea how to guess what is the correct multiple of the pot. 2x is a very kind of arbitrary choice on my part. Pwned. I felt good for the first couple hours playing against this thing, but a lot of demoralizing things have happened in the last 20 minutes.
You had about 3 hands in a row where things went south very quickly.
And this really is what rattles my confidence in real poker games as well, is not so much running bad. I mean, that can do it over a particularly long stretch, but just a few bad beats or something, I generally still play pretty well. But when I consistently find myself either in situations where I legitimately am not sure of the right play, or where I make a play, and this is one of the really tricky things for human brains to wrap around, is making a play that is kind of thin in the sense of, like, a bluff that needs to succeed 33% of the time and will succeed 40% of the time is profitable, but will frequently lose. Will lose more often than it wins. And so it's kind of difficult to convince yourself that you made the right play when you're frequently losing. Or if you're value betting and you will need to win more than 50% of the time that you're called, you'll need to have the best hand. You still will, bet and get called by a better hand somewhat frequently, and it can still be correct for you to make the value bet, and it can still be a profitable bet. And it's another one of those you sort of question your play, because usually those thin bets are bets that you're not entirely sure it's the right play when you make it, and the results, it's very tricky to backwards determine from the results whether or not it was the right play. And that's the sort of thing that will often shake my confidence in game. And as Nate and I discussed, you really don't want to end up taking all the fancy plays out of your game and just saying like, well, from now on, I'm just only going to I'm going to stop raising. That's the kind of thing that's actually sort of a disastrous adaptation to make. Jack also feels too good to fold in position to a 3-bet. Certainly possible I'm wrong about that. I'm inclined to say this is a flop that favors my calling range, but that could be based on my experience against meatbags and a case where DeepStack is going to have much better board coverage. The main question is how good a jack or a 9 will be in a scenario where it goes bet call. Whether I can expect to have the best hand if a jack or a 9 feels. I don't think this is a great hand for barreling. I think if it doesn't fold the flop, I probably just want to take a freebie. I think if I bet again and get called, a jack and a 9 will definitely not be good. So I don't want to, well, maybe not definitely, but will rarely be good. So I don't really want to kill those as outs for myself. This is another one of those I really don't know whether I should be bluffing here. I don't know if Jack 10 is a hand that would be playing this way. It's like, what is my value betting range after I check the flop? Or after I check the turn, I don't have a lot of strong hands. Most strong hands want to bet the turn. If I peeled a 3, I could check the turn. So very occasionally I'll river trips, but I don't have a lot of 3x in my flop betting range. I think I just don't get to do a lot of bluffing here because I don't think I have very many strong hands that I would be. Yeah, I'm going to give up here. It feels bad to me to check back such a weak hand, but DeepStack has convinced me I probably should be doing that more. Woohoo! Finally! And that's so even though I lost the pot, I feel great. I feel great. It's nice for me also to see DeepStack playing top set that way. I've consistently thought of top set as a good slow playing hand because when you make trips and you're holding 2 8s and the top card on the board is an 8, it's quite unlikely your opponent has a hand strong enough to call a bet just because it's hard for your opponent to have an 8 when you're looking at so many of them. So I've consistently thought of that as a good hand to sort of play possum with and to check when you actually have a quite strong hand. And my experience working with solvers has been that they very rarely slow play hands that strong, including in situations where I would expect them to. So it's kind of nice for me to see, at least in that scenario, DeepStack playing the hand in a manner similar to how I would have played it, but not necessarily similar to how I've seen some solvers. Yeah, I mean, not that they're necessarily the same situation as the ones I've been looking at. There might just be some subtle difference that I'm missing, but I like that, not just because of my check, but also because I often play the hand the same way that DeepStack did. This is a poor bluffing hand. Will occasionally win at showdown, such as against Discourse suited.
Well, Andrew, I want to thank you for doing this, and you and Nate, and we should definitely set up a time to debrief this with you on the podcast, but I'm going to wish you the best of luck, and I'm going to try to go to sleep because it's 2 a.m. here, but I'm probably just going to actually finish having you finish watching the match, but I'm going to try to go to sleep.
Okay, well, good night, and I'll see you in a few minutes.
All right, thanks.
I'm going to bluff with this now because I can probably get DeepStack off of ace high and king high, and I do have a bit of a draw if I get called I do have a few outs. Don't think that's a real good, well, I blocked 9-7. That's a little bit relevant. trying to think what hands I would bluff with, if not this. I'm going to go for it. And essentially, I'm going to be thinking in terms of repping 9-7. I don't know that I would bet 9-7 on the turn, though. I probably would not. So that's a bad hand to represent. I guess I want to represent 10-9. I'd probably bet pot with that hand. That's not one I feel too bad about. That I feel like is just a pretty strong hand that even if it calls with hands that strong, my bluff could still be okay. The reason I felt bad about that last bluff, the previous bluff that got called, was it was a hand that I thought it might fold. So when it didn't fold it, that made me feel bad. I think this is a pretty good check raising hand because I have so many backdoors. So I think like 9x, Queen X, and hearts are all good barreling cards for me. This is not a flop I'm going to check raise real often, but a lot of my check raises, even a lot of my bluffs, have a lot of equity because they're going to be hands like 7-6 of hearts. So I think it's a pretty reasonable check raising spot. My value range here is mostly 2-pair plus. But I think because so many of my bluffs are high equity, well, I had the best hand anyway. Because so many of my bluffing hands are high equity hands, I can actually have a fairly wide bluffing range anyway. This is a pretty bad hand, and I'm going to fold it. I think this was you guys, Michael, and I apologize if I'm confusing you with someone. But there was, I feel like this was quite a while ago. Maybe it was even like 2008 or 2009. It might have even been that far back. So I mean, maybe it was the group, but not you personally. Did a kind of like man versus machine match against like Phil Locke and some other people. Does that?
Yeah. That's right. And that was me too.
Okay,
I joined the group in 2006. Yeah,
okay.
so it's been. So in 2007 we played against Phil Locke and LD Islami for the first time. That was heads up limit. Our program at the time, Polaris, lost for a small margin. We played 4 500-hand duplicate matches, so 4,000 hands total, and we lost by a little bit to them. And then the next year we came back with a better version of Polaris. We played against heads-up limit specialists. It was Matt Orlenko and some people at he chose, and we beat them by a small margin. So that was the first time that any program beat Human Poker Pros in a meaningful match.
And one of the things that I remember about that match, I think you had actually incorporated some trash talking. So the machine would actually say things like "nice call, meatbag" or something. Am I remembering that correctly?
We joked about that, but we didn't actually do that.
Oh, okay.
One of the neat things about that match is, okay, so that was 2007 and 2008 were those two matches, right? So, just barely losing humans, just barely beating humans. Quite a bit later in 2011, for the first time, we were able to measure the worst case performance of our poker bots. It's like, if you actually knew exactly what they're doing, how much you could crush them for with like a maximally exploitive strategy. And the neat thing that we found is that those bots, even though they were beating Matt Orlenko and team at the time, were massively exploitable. So I think the one in 2008 that beat Matt was beatable for 11 big bets per 100.
Wow.
It's like massive, right? And then over time since then, like from 2010 onwards, we got that number smaller and smaller and smaller. And then in 2015, we managed to solve the game. But that's kind of neat to think about now, right? Where we have DeepStack and it's, in the paper, right? We played against 33 pros. It won pretty solidly against them. We're hoping to be able to go play against heads-up no-limit specialists now through the Twitch matches. And even if we're successful and we're beating human pros, there's still going to be this question about how close to optimal play is it? And if it's like heads-up limit, it might be really, really far. Even if it is superhuman. No limit's going to be tricky. We don't have a good plan on how to exactly measure worst case performance, so we won't know maybe ever exactly how exploitable DeepStack is. In the paper, we talk about it a little bit because we have a new technique for kind of getting a lower bound on exploitability. So it's exploitable for at least this much, and we call that local best response. That program does not find any exploitable hole in DeepStack.
Wow.
And it does find massive holes in all of the earlier PokerBots. So DeepStack could still be exploitable, and it's just that local best response is not good enough to find it. So we don't know that yet, like just how bad it is. But so far it looks pretty solid, as far as we can tell.
So this is kind of interesting. I took a slightly unconventional line here, making a big bet on the turned ace. This is not often a hand I would play quite so fast, but I think I'm not betting a flop with a lot of ace X, and so I think this is a rare case why I'll have an ace on the turn. And now I've rivered, obviously, 2-pair, quite a strong hand. However, 9-8 is also a hand I would probably play this way, so I'm conscious of the fact that this is not... Like, I have quite a few stronger hands I could have here as well. Probably 16 combinations of 9-8 even. I don't know why I would play any of them differently than this. I have, like, all the sets are in my range, with probably the exception of pocket 10s, but maybe not. I might even play pocket 10s this way. So even though I have a very strong hand here, I'm kind of questioning whether it's strong enough to go all in for 2 times the pot. I'm inclined to think it isn't. The difficulty here, as we discussed with Nate, is if I bet less than all in, I open myself up to a check raise that can put me in a pretty bad spot. I think I'm just going to have to accept that, though. And if I get check raised, I'm going to try. I think it's... I really don't know what to do if I get check raised. We're just going to hope that doesn't happen. This is a somewhat arbitrarily chosen bet size. Did it call that? Sometimes I have trouble figuring out whether I called it. I have to go back and think. I think it did, right? Yeah, it must have. I think it did. I have to think about what the pot size was. Yeah, I think there was it was only 6,800 in the pot, so yeah, it must have called. Okay, sorry. So you're saying that you didn't find any exploitability in this program?
Yeah, there's none that we've been able to find yet. The program we're using now can't exactly compute it. It can only try making a few actions within that same betting round and see if any of those trip it up. And so yeah, it doesn't find any mistakes like that. But it does find massively exploitable holes in all of our earlier PokerBots and all of the other ones from other people that agreed to let us test it. So for example, what was the number for ours? It was way worse than if it always folded. It was...
I think all of them are 400 big blinds per 100.
Yeah. Our earlier programs were beatable for 400 big blinds per 100. Wait, 400?
Yeah, I think so. It's 4,000.
Oh, 4,000 middle blind?
Yeah.
So that's much worse than if you had just folded pre-flop.
By the way, there was a question from Twitch later on if you want to have a look at it. It's in our chat here.
Okay. You've talked in the past about betting small, e.g. 1/3 pot, having merit given how infrequently it has to work, defaulting to checking for reasons, and betting large because it's in vogue. I'm not sure I understand the question. It sounds like the person is saying I should be betting more often. Please rephrase your question, Twitch questioner. My feeble human brain cannot grok it. That's a good flop. I'm really flopping a lot of trips. That is a good way to win a poker match, which I am barely doing. That is actually not that consequential of a turn card. I mean, obviously I have an even stronger hand than I did before, but there's really only 2 hands that were previously beating me that I'm now beating. My equity against A7 has improved. In terms of which of us is more likely to have a 4, it might actually be me. I don't really know how often DeepStack is going to show up with a 4 here. I think a 4 is a hand I would often bet on the flop. I would like to try to get all the money in. If I bet pot now, I think I can bet a little less than pot now and still be able to shove the river. So betting like 3,500 now will leave slightly over pot in the stack. 36. Okay, that's the sort of hand that should be folded into a turn bet. If DeepStack had folded an ace there, I would have been more concerned. A bit unlucky. I mean, I'm lucky to get anything paid off when I have quads. It's a bit unlucky that he didn't have an ace there. I think DeepStack will rarely fold an ace pre-flop, I would imagine. So quite a lot of ace X could have there, but could have had a hand weaker than what it had also. I'm not terribly familiar with the genre myself, Michael, but I'm curious if you have much familiarity or opportunity to take in fictional representations of artificial intelligence. I mean, I guess like Terminator jumps to mind immediately, but I don't know, are there any movies or books or anything that you think of as handling the subject particularly well or particularly poorly?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, like we get the Terminator joke all the time. Like everybody in AI gets the Terminator joke all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. What have been good ones? Personally, I thought the season of Westworld that was just on was really interesting for that. That was maybe one of the best representations I've seen. But that one was kind of less about, yeah. I don't know. I guess it was. It was kind of about the plight of being an AI and what it's going to do.
I just got outplayed. Yeah, I did know. I've not seen Westworld myself. I did kind of know it was about that. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, Westworld's good. I don't know what else other than that. I'm sorry. I'm just asking the other guys in the room here with me.
So I enjoyed Ex Machina, the movie, a bit.
Yeah,
because
Ex Machina was really good.
I haven't seen it in a while, but at the time at least, I thought I Robot was kind of interesting. But I'm not sure that people see it now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough subject to do well.
Yeah.
This Star Trek simply is unreal. Although Star Trek has a habit of making logical characters very muted in their things, so that's also good.
This is a less good semi-bluffing hand than it might seem, because I don't think a 4 and a 3 will often be good. Like, they could actually be good in a check down pot if I hit a 4 or a 3, but if I bet and get called, a 4 and 3 is quite unlikely to be good. Hitting a 6 is also kind of dicey because 9-8 could be in my opponent's range. Not that I won't often have the best hand if I hit a 6, but I think that we guess to do the same min bet thing you see me do a lot. It's hard for me to imagine this being bad with 4 high. Yes, I mean even semi-bluffing there and hitting a 6, like your implied odds are pretty limited, especially given that like one of the 4 6s is a heart, and that's pretty bad. So that's why you didn't see me semi-bluffing that hand prior to the river. But it's hard for me to imagine 4 high being a bad bluffing hand on the river. Like I just don't see how big of a mistake it can be to bet the minimum when you have the nut low. but it's too good of a hand to fold right now. The backdoor club draw is helpful. If that 8 had been a club, it would make it easier for me to call another pot size bet. I think as it is, I have to fold to a large bet. Half pot. Don't know what is the right play. Do I half pot bet? Actually might fold. Not having a gutter to go with my pair is unfortunate because a lot of my pairs here will have gutter. Like I have a lot of ace X in my range. I have a lot of better queen X, which is a little bit relevant. I think DeepStack could probably have a hand like queen jack here. Even like jack 10 is probably a hand I would rather call with than queen deuce. I'm beating most of the same hands. A call I'd make against other humans a lot. I'll make it against DeepStack and probably get outplayed after the flop. What? How can that be correct? There's no way that's good. There's zero chance. That just can't be right. There's a flaw. It's a flaw in your program, Michael. I'm only half joking. I really, when it comes to going all in, like that's one of the few spots I feel like should be just. It's not a spot where you have to worry about like board coverage or mixing up your play or anything. I feel like it might be possible to make a case that that's simply an incorrect play, like demonstrable by human means incorrect.
Sorry, I missed the hand because I was answering someone's question on Twitch. What
Okay,
happened?
yeah. So I think I raised to maybe 1,200, and DeepStack went all in for like 18,000. So it was like a pretty large overbet relative to the pot, and it ended up having 8-5 offsuit, which. I think there's a lot of cases if we're talking about not going all in where there may be some merit to kind of like mixing up your play because of things like board coverage that we considered. But when it comes to going all in, given that DeepStack will sometimes fold to a min raise, it's hard to imagine it being correct to jam 8-5 offsuit, but also correct to fold anything. Like it's really difficult for me to imagine that it's not doing something exploitable if it's sometimes folding, but also sometimes jamming 8-5 offsuit. It's done a lot of things that surprise me where I'm tempted to say what probably knows better than I do. That's one of the cases that I feel like is probably like demonstrably wrong.
Cool. Well, we can flag that one, and then when we talk to you guys later on, we'll when we meet on the podcast in a week or whenever it is.
Cool story, bro.
No, sorry, I didn't mean it that way. No, I think now I'm almost as excited when it does something, when we find some mistake in it as
I'm thrilled. This is the first time I've been like, I actually would have played that hand better than you did, DeepStack. I'm sure of it. So I've rivered an unexpectedly strong hand here. I think DeepStack can have a fair bit of ace X and king X that it checks back. I can have a lot of nothing here. This is important. So all I did, I called a pre-flop raise, and then I've shown nothing but weakness since then. So I have lots of hands that would love to be able to bluff here. Very rarely will I have a hand as strong as this one after checking the flop and turn. I think that means I get to make a pretty big bet here, and DeepStack is still going to be forced to call with worse. Once again, I don't really know how to guess the appropriate size. I don't think DeepStack is completely capped, nor is 10-9 the very top of my range. but I feel like I should be able to get away with 2x pot. Let's see. DeepStack did not feel like calling with king. Well, it seems my concern about these matches finishing in less than 4 hours was unfounded.
Yeah, I guess we didn't really count enough for the the conversation time and like analyzing the hand.
Some of these easily could have been over sooner. I mean, if it hadn't sucked out on me, this match would have been over half an hour ago. Doesn't really matter what I do against that hand. My reluctance to bet overly large there was based on the fact that in terms of giving DeepStack a decision or something like that, when it has a 10, a lot of the hands I'm betting there are going to have a lot of equity against the 10, like king, queen, queen, jack, stuff like that. So an overly large bet size just gives DeepStack a trivial fold with a 10. Because I also have a lot of ace-x, of course. Not a good flop for 8-4 spades. That is a good turn, though. I actually think if it had checked to me, I think I could get away with min betting. I think I have too many unpaired hands to fold any pair to a min bet. Questioning whether I should be turning this into a bluff. I think this is pretty close to the worst hand I could have. The queen is a significant river card because a lot of the hands worse than a pair of fours that I would have called with on the turn are like king, queen, and queen 10, which are now improved. I guess I can have some club-club combinations that missed, and I would definitely want to bluff with those. But I think I'm going to do a fair bit of value betting in this situation. I can have aces. I can have queens that I would value bet. If I'm going to turn a pair into a bluff, I'm going to do it for a large bet sizing. You know, you've seen me bet small in situations where I only needed to make weak hands fold. There's no sense in betting a 4 for a small amount because his folds are just going to be king X and 10X or something. But I think for a larger size, I could probably get DeepStack off of a jack. Oh, goodness. Okay, this is a fold, and it could easily be bluffing here. And it was. God. That's something, you know, I think I talked about with Nate about this before. You don't see humans check very often, or check raise very often in that spot. But DeepStack is just good at poker. Okay. With deeper stacks, I might raise this, but I don't want to face a shove. I guess I could just shove pre-flop, but that's not very fun. We'll see a flop. Well, Michael, I think a lot of people will be inclined to think that you're in a field that even if artificial intelligence generally is likely to replace a lot of human jobs in the next 30 to 40 years, it might seem like you're kind of in the right field, like you're working with the artificial intelligence, so you're safe. But I guess I've also heard some things that computers or artificial intelligences may be able to, you know, learn how to replicate themselves, reproduce themselves. I don't know. Are you replaceable by machines as easily as I am?
I think maybe eventually everyone is. Yeah, computers programming computers. I mean, I don't know. Depending on who you talk to, even among AI researchers, they'll give you a very wide range of numbers for how long that's going to take. I think the more Yeah, I mean, short term, we're definitely going to see some very big swings in what jobs are like. I mean, the one that's been talked a lot about in the press is truck driving.
Right.
Autonomous cars are, I don't know. I mean, those jobs are going to go. That's just too easy for computers to do automatically. And then that's like the, almost every state's most common profession,
right,
is truck driver, right? So yeah, that's going to cause massive upheaval.
And even aside from truck driving, I mean, there's a lot of other driving jobs also that are probably also on the line.
Sure. Oh yeah. I mean, anything to do with taxis, right? Like that's Uber's endgame.
Right.
Yeah.
There's probably also a lot of jobs where AI would be able to help augment human decision making. So I mean, even without the idea of AI getting to the point where it's just going to do the entire job without human intervention, there's other things where it could support decision making or kind of guide a human's hand towards things that you might want to pay attention to, like in like medical diagnostics or something like this. Like you could be recommending, here's possible things that might be an issue for, but like you're going to leave it in the hands of someone will actually be in the hands of a human. So.
See, I feel like you guys are changing the subject. My question is it going to take your job?
Yeah. Eventually, maybe. I mean, yeah, I don't know. If we do our jobs right, then yes. But yeah.
I'm unsure whether this is a good bluffing hand. I'm inclined to say that it is. A lot of backdoors. I have equity against the 7. It's hard to see betting the flop being too bad. It's a good turn card. Little unsure whether I should be betting or checking. Getting check raised would be really miserable. That by itself is not a reason to check. I think I also block some of the hands I'd be most interested in charging. 9-8, 9-6. I think it's a little safer to check here because even some of the worst river cards are not quite as bad given the cards that I'm holding. There's not a lot of rivers I can value that if I check either, though. I think if I... Ugh. I'm so miserable about the idea of facing a check raise, which is not a good way to make your decisions. But I'll check. Not good. Okay, so for the same reasons I didn't want to face a check raise, I'm also not excited to face a pot-sized bet on the turn. It's tempted to say that I block busted diamonds, but I don't really, because if DeepStack had 10x of diamonds, it would not be, I think, bluffing the river. I do block 9-6 and Jack-9, which is quite relevant. Block King-10. I'm not sure what its bluffs would be. Maybe it turns like a 5 into a bluff. Pretty sure I should be calling this. Given that I was on the fence about checking the turn in terms of hand strength, like I was almost thinking it was strong enough hand to put a bet in on the turn, and the fact that I'm blocking several of the better hands that could get there on the river, I'm pretty sure this is a call. Unfortunate, but mostly just bad luck. I think that King-9 is a reasonable hand for DeepStack to bet that way, in part because of the 9 blocker. Right? It doesn't have to worry quite as often about running into nut hands that I could hold. And so, like, given the king 9 is part of its value range, I'm also blocking king 9 when I hold 10-9. Maybe this is just a very convoluted way for me to explain fishiness, but I think that the fact that it's value betting that hand makes me feel a little bit better about my blocker and about my decision to call. That's a good river card. My range is very wide because this is a check down pot. Probably wide enough that I can get an overbet paid off. Not by 8 deuce though. I'm lucky it didn't decide to bluff with it. Could go all in, could raise call, could limp call. The problem with limp calling is it gives DeepStack a chance to see a free flop and then play well against me. I'm going to raise and call it and all in. Come on, DeepStack, bring it. 8-5 offsuit. Let's go. Okay. I think I have weaker hands than this to bluff with. This is a pretty poor hand, but given that it's a check down pot, I will have hands weaker than this. Yep. So I do actually have a little bit of showdown value. Great. This one is probably strong enough to limp. Min raising is the other option. I'm so afraid of seeing flops against DeepStack. We'll just min raise, call it off. It really doesn't shove that much pre-flop. Human players jam a lot more. I think, again, because human players, very difficult for human players to play optimally after the flop, and DeepStack can do that, or can come close enough. So, like, as a human player, what's the optimal play here? I don't really like bet calling it off because a lot of the hands that are going to check shove are going to be like Queen Jack or Ace Jack. That is not a great turn card. I'm not happy to face a pot-sized bet. I don't know. I don't know what the right play is. Blocking Queen Jack isn't good. This feels like too strongly hand to fold. Not having a club sucks, but I'm betting a lot of my kings on the flop. I think I'm just going to call and call blank rivers. Blocking Queen Jack can be relevant on some rivers. Okay. I'm actually wondering now whether I should be shoving for value, whether DeepStack could have a 10. I mean, I guess not, given that I was like not feeling that great about calling the turn. It's just surprising to me that DeepStack's not going all in on the river. But it doesn't make sense that like I wouldn't feel good facing an all in bet, but then like I shouldn't be able to go all in myself. It feels pretty weak to just call here. So why do I think it's so strong? Just because it potted the turn? Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's doing that with a 7. It has more 10s than kings, but does it pot 10s on the turn? I mean, I'm just assuming it never folds to a shove. I mean, I would have called a shove on a king. I mean, it can't fold. It's the question of whether it has the 10 in the first place. I mean, it's not folding the 10. I don't think it can really. I'm just gonna call. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine it was going to fold that hand to a shove. I probably look like a weak tight fish for that. Briefly considered betting that turn, but right, so having check called the flop, I think I'm now very close to the bottom of my range, and probably should bluff. And given that I'm turning a pair into a bluff, I want to use a pretty big sizing, so we will pot it. The objective here is to get a fold from an ace, a king, a 10, like non-flush hands that are better than mine. Nice. This is one I think I can just move all in with pre-flop, regardless of the action. I would have preferred to have seen a raise. Just because I win more when he folds if he raises. Okay, so what is this now? 2-3? Meatbags are still down a game.
Yep. That's
Close though. We're getting to the end of 4 hours. Do you want to do the one more, or?
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was kind of hoping it was. I was coming with that flip, and it would just be over.
If you want to, we can always save that last game for when we do the podcast with you guys again.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, I'm tired enough. I'm ready to call it if you guys are.
Makes sense.
But thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for everyone who stuck it out. I can't imagine there are too many viewers who are hoping for another hour or two of this. But it's been fun for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing me sweat and get. I think there are a few spots I'm proud of. There are a few where I felt pretty fishy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks to you and Nate for both showing up and doing this. This is awesome. We're really excited to finally have it. Playing out in public.
We're really honored to be asked, and yeah, this is fascinating for us for a lot of reasons.
Cool. So we'll run the analysis on the hands. We'll release the hand histories probably by tomorrow. We'll just take a little bit of time to do it, and then we'll see you guys for the podcast. Did you already schedule that with Mike? Is that a week, 2 weeks?
No, we have. I think most likely, or I think from our end anyway, there won't be a barrier to having you not for this coming Monday, but for the Monday after. I think, at least from our end, it shouldn't be difficult to schedule that. So if you guys are reasonably free next week, we can probably make that happen for that would be the 10th of April. I think we should be able to get it out for.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think that should work for us. We'll that will work out through email.
All right. Thanks to everybody who's been patient during all this. I hope it was interesting to you.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Just before we close up, we're going to do a match next week. Next week on Wednesday at what time is it on? 3?
6 p.m. Eastern.
At 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to play against the guys from the 2+2 podcast. So Terrence Chen and Adam Schwartz. So just like this one, they're going to do a freeze-out tournament each. I think they're going to be. We talked about a best of 5, but we might have to shorten that for time. Come back then. And if you have questions, feel free to ask us on Twitter, and we can answer your questions there. All right. Thanks again, Andrew. We'll see
All right,
everyone
have a
next week.
Thanks everyone for coming out.